I am the chair of the Standards and Assessment Committee, and I represent District 1, which is the northern part of the state. And we'll go ahead with the board members we have here. We have a couple more that are coming, but they had some trouble this morning. So go ahead, Leanne.
Good morning, Leanne Wood, District 4, the South Davis County and North Salt Lake.
Good morning, Sarah Reel, District 5. It's pretty much downtown through Murray and West Valley.
Okay, thank you. Emily is online, Jenny. Oh, Emily is, okay. Emily, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, Board Member Green?
Yes, thank you. Emily Green with District 14. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. We have a lot of public comment this morning, or at least several. We normally don't have any. So we're grateful for those of you that are joining us for public comment, and we will go ahead and start with our public comment. Is it 2 minutes normally we give individuals in this committee? 2 to 3 minutes. When it gets close to 3 minutes, I'll probably just let you know we're getting close on that. Okay, nobody's here in person, right? They're all, okay. So give me just 1 minute. You have a timer then? I'm sorry. Okay. Sorry. No, you're good. You're good. The first person I have on here is Brianne Bean. And are you there, Brianne? Is she online? If not, we'll come back. You go ahead and unmute yourself so we know.
I don't see her now, Jenny, so maybe go.
Okay, we will circle back, Brianne, in just a minute, or Bian. Am I saying that right?
I'm not sure.
Banan? Am I saying that right? Okay.
We have Sunny is here, Joni and Jude.
Okay, Sunny, do you want to go ahead and unmute, and then I will let you know when to start. Do you have your timer?
I have it on my.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead, and my secretary will just let us know if we're running close on time. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, my name is Sunny Erdley. I began my teaching career as an instructor at Dixie State University, and when I started there, I found an abundance of resources for teachers. Textbooks, research-based curriculum, professional lesson development materials, and data-backed problem sets with clear standards. My job was simple: teach the material in an engaging way that helped my students succeed. After several years, I moved into teaching high school. The transition was smooth academically because I was essentially teaching the same math concepts. But I was shocked when the school year began, and I began to discover that there were no textbooks, no approved curriculum, no technology programs, and no data-backed problem sets for the courses I was teaching. Thankfully, experienced teachers in my department had built worksheets and materials for each unit and generously shared them with me. I was grateful, but I couldn't understand why I was photocopying lessons every day when there were perfectly good textbooks sitting on the shelves of my classroom. I was told we couldn't use them because they did not follow the Utah core. The reality is that very few textbooks, technology platforms, or research-based curriculum systems align with Utah's secondary integrated math standards. Utah does not provide a state-adopted comprehensive secondary math curriculum, which means many teachers and districts must piece together their own materials to align with the standards. After more than 15 years of using these integrated standards, we still see concerning indicators. Only about 32% of Utah students meet the ACT College Readiness Benchmark in Utah, and about 1 in 4 Utah students entering college still need remedial coursework, most often in mathematics. Teachers are also telling us something important. In a recent survey, 64 math teachers in Washington County, nearly 72% supported returning to the traditional AGA MET sequence, while only 11% preferred the integrated model. Across their responses, the message was consistent. Math often fills a mile wide and an inch deep, leaving less time for depth and mastery in algebra and other key concepts. Math itself has not fundamentally changed, yet Utah has revised its integrated standards 3 times in 15 years, each time asking teachers to rebuild courses without a stable curriculum system. Returning to the AGA model would align Utah with the rest of the nation, colleges, national assessment, and the vast majority of curriculum resources already developed by experts in mathematics education. Most importantly, it would allow teachers to focus on what we do best, teaching students, not writing entire math programs from scratch. Our students deserve stronger foundations in algebra, clear standards, and proven curriculum support. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person I have is, who do you have? Maybe I better ask who you have online. Do you have Judy online?
Yes, yes.
Okay, Judy, do you want to unmute and, if possible, and I guess I should look and see. Oh, yeah, you are. We just do like to see visually who's talking, so thank you for doing that. Go ahead and start.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead and share, give us your full name and tell us who you are so that we are familiar with that.
Okay, my name's Judy Coburn. I'm a mother of 5 children who's just passionate about math, and we live in the Weaver School District. Okay, I have 5 children ranging from a high school senior down to a kindergarten student. I come to you today not just as a parent, but as someone who deeply values mathematics education. I was a strong math student myself, advancing through calculus and beyond, and I know firsthand how powerful and a solid math foundation can be. My children have also shown strong abilities in math. They consistently test at many grade levels above their peers. Yet despite that, our experience with Utah's integrated math model has been frustrating and confusing. When my oldest child took secondary math 1 in 8th grade, I was honestly dumbfounded. He would bring home worksheets to complete with almost no way to reference what had been taught in class. There were no textbooks, no clear online resources, and no examples to look back upon. I kept thinking, how are parents supposed to help their children when there's nothing to refer to? This is the #1 complaint I hear from other parents as well. They want to help their children, but with nothing to reference but a worksheet, they don't know where to turn. It's not about whether our children can get an A, it's about whether they are truly understanding what they are being taught. In mathematics, it is essential to be able to reference example problems, theorems, formulas, and explanations. But under the current system, it often feels like every teacher is left to create their own materials. The resources are limited and consistency is lacking. Another challenge is the way topics constantly jump around. Instead of spending a full year building deep understanding in subjects like algebra or geometry, students move rapidly between topics. I especially felt my son's geometry skills were lacking as he prepared for the ACT. Because of these frustrations, we eventually moved our children to a hybrid approach, some online classes and some in-person classes. Even though the online classes are still integrated, at least I can see the lessons, review the material, and help fill in the gaps. As a parent in the trenches, I struggle to understand why Utah continues to pursue this model when most other states have returned to the traditional geometry algebra structure. I respectfully ask the Utah State School Board to acknowledge that our math system needs improvement. Returning to the AGA model would provide teachers with a stronger resources, clear textbooks, and a more focused curriculum, giving them the tools that they need to succeed and helping our students truly understand mathematics. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's Brennan. I see it in my email, but I have the name just a little different here. Brennan Bean. I see that you're on. Do you want to go ahead and unmute? And then you can go ahead and share your name and maybe who you are, and then give your comments. And I don't know if you heard before that it's about 2 to 3 minutes is what we're looking at, okay?
Great. Yeah, thanks. Sorry, I was a little bit late. I'm traveling and just had to find some random building at Idaho State University to take this call.
You're good. We're glad you were able to get on, so
Okay.
go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm Brennan Bean, Associate Professor of Statistics at Utah State University. Also part of the Data Science and AI Center, but I'm representing myself. So this is not an official Utah State University view. And so it was interesting listening to the last 2 comments about the difficulties with some of the coursework implementation with the current integrated standards. I come here in support of those standards, and I think that the reason why I'm doing that is I'm running 2 things. One is I taught a class of data science students. These were all the washed up kids who had no other math class they could take except this class in college. And then I also run a $1 million research program in applied statistics. And one of the things that I've noticed about traditional mathematics curriculum is we have an obsessive focus on by hand calculation And that's not what anyone actually uses when we get to those higher levels. And so one of the reasons why I support the integrated standards is that it provides a framework. And, you know, we have these issues with textbooks, and I'm not discounting those, but it provides a framework for teachers to solve big, messy, complex problems that can't be binned into just algebra problems or just geometry problems. And so sometimes when we talk about these different tests, we're talking about by hand calculation, and that's not what this modern AI-driven world that we're working in is valuing anymore. They're valuing people that can represent the world with math, and that can only happen in an integrated way. I'm short on time, but the reason I wanted to come today is I wanted to just offer to have this conversation with any board member or anyone else at Utah State University with me and my colleagues so that we can discuss the way in which higher ed can better support this integrated standard approach as an on-ramp into these big complex degrees that we have at Utah State University that involve AI, that involve computation and these other elements that simply knowing how to do math by hand is not preparing students for those things. And I think that the integrated standards give us our best shot for that. So thanks for your time, and I hope that we can continue this conversation.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you for finding a room. I've had to do that same thing before. Sometimes it's just in a car, but I'm glad you were able to find a great red room, it looks like. So, okay, we're going to go ahead with Joni Allred, and then we'll come back to Christine Cook. I'm not sure if Christine's on there, but that's all right. We'll do all the math. I think this is also a math comment. So, Joni, would you introduce yourself and then go ahead with your comments?
Perfect. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Good morning, members of the board. My name is Joni Allred, and I am a special education teacher. I am here to share my thoughts on math in our older grades. I grew up here in Utah, and as a student, I loved math. I remember taking geometry from Mr. Rogers in 9th grade in the Weber School District. Spending an entire year focused on geometry allowed me to truly solidify those concepts, and decades later, I still retain that understanding. When I began teaching, I taught 3rd grade in the Jordan School District, so I wasn't immediately aware of the changes that had been made to Utah's secondary math structure. But when my own children entered junior high and high school in the Davis School District, I was surprised to learn that the traditional sequence of pre-algebra, algebra 1, geometry, and algebra 2 had been replaced by integrated secondary math courses. I understand the idea behind the change. The goal was for students to see different types of math every year so they could be exposed to concepts multiple times. In theory, that sounds helpful, but in practice, it has not produced the results we hoped for. I now teach high school special education, and I see the impact of this system every day. Many of my students begin in secondary math 1 in 9th grade, even though they are not ready for that level of math. Instead of building a strong foundation, they are pushed through the sequence. If they fail secondary math 1, they move on to secondary math 2 anyway. For students who are already struggling with learning, this system does not provide the structure, direct instruction, or time they need to understand math concepts. Instead, they become confused and discouraged. Many of them begin to believe they are bad at math. I have watched capable students shut down and say, I'm just bad at math, when what they really needed was good curriculum, direct instruction, and more time to build the foundation. Utah students need stronger options, better instruction, clearer curriculum, and pathways that allow them to truly master foundational math skills. I urge the board to consider returning to a more traditional sequence, such as algebra, geometry, and algebra 2. This model aligns with colleges, curriculum developers, and many other states, and it gives students the opportunity to deeply learn each area of math. Thank you for your time and for your work on behalf of Utah students.
Jody, thank you. Thank you for our public comments. Christine Fairbanks, are you on?
No, she's not.
Okay, if she gets on, will you just let us know, and we'll take that at some point in our meeting if that happens. So thank you for all of you that have come today to give public comment. We appreciate that. All right, we are going to start with go to our second item, which is a recognition of progress. Sarah Wibke, are you doing this one for us? Oh, you're doing it, okay.
Thank you, committee. Leah Voorhees, Deputy Superintendent of Student Achievement. So I'm super excited to share recognition of progress, achievement, and improvement with you all today. Over the last 2 years, the school improvement team strengthened statewide school improvement by standardizing documentation, improving communication and transparency with local education agencies, streamlining processes, and aligning policies, funding, and technical assistance with state and federal requirements to better support LEAs and build long-term capacity. And hopefully you all can see the team, but in your backup, there's a lot of information about why we have chosen to honor the school improvement team, and I'm going to begin by introducing them. So first of all, I can't see them because they're behind the monitor, but Greg Fern, if you'll wave, stand up, is a school improvement specialist. Krista Hotelling, there she is on that side, school improvement specialist. Julie Stephan Lindsay. Hello.
Do me a favor, come up here. We really are behind. Yeah, we're behind
There you go. Thank
cameras,
you.
our screen here. So
Sarah
thank you.
Dutray in the stripes, Megan Tippett in the middle, and let's see. Okay, so the coordinator is Quinn Kellis, and their director is Sarah Whipke. So I'd like to just read some excerpts from the recognition. So the school improvement team has established a range of resources to promote consistency and clarity in decision-making and communication. For example, school improvement team decision documentation ensures systematic recording of decisions, thereby facilitating uniformity. And that is an actual title. School Improvement Team Decision Documentation. That's a title, all in caps, process that they have developed and are using. Communication with LEAs has been refined through the introduction of the School Improvement Listserv, the organization of informational meetings such as data webinars, and the implementation of procedures to remind LEAs regarding their grants, timelines, and expenditures before the conclusion of the fiscal year, resulting in increased compliance. Efforts to enhance procedural efficiency include the creation of a year of programs, a calendar that outlines monthly tasks and assignments. Clear roles and responsibilities have been articulated, and team expectations have been formally agreed upon to reinforce operational integrity. The website and associated pages have undergone updates to guarantee concise and accurate information and resources. To optimize operations, the teams developed multiple standard operating procedures to formalize new processes, including an SOP that facilitates the efficient provision of the School Leadership and Development Program at stipends in accordance with code and rule. The process for resource allocation reviews has been restructured to streamline technical assistance, and the delivery of technical assistance has been recalibrated to better address the needs of LEAs, organized around the 4 pillars of school improvement and tailored to the appropriate phase of the improvement cycle. Furthermore, the needs assessment process has been reorganized to enhance support for LEAs. The team is committed to building the capacity of LEAs to sustain their own school improvement efforts and has proactively addressed potential issues such as those related to Springboard being designated for the first time this year. And for the newer board members, that's obviously a newer program, so that was a big undertaking to get that all organized. Additionally, development of data dashboards has promoted transparency for LEAs. Several foundational documents have been revised or rewritten to ensure alignment and, this is my favorite word, in the whole document, lucidity. Regarding funding, the team has established the 1003 funding formulas for federal school improvement funding allocation and provided oversight and documentation for 1003 funding. Processes have been amended to promote consistency and clarity in funding and enhance opportunities for more rigorous interventions. The team actively evaluates the overall health of the school improvement system, including additional programs in which designated schools are likely to participate. Ongoing brainstorming efforts are directed toward quantifying levels of technical assistance and assessing the outcomes of each supportive initiative And upon achieving a shared understanding and capacity within the team, consultant contracts were concluded, resulting in cost savings for the USBE. The team continues to update practices to ensure the provision of concise and accurate information, maintaining an emphasis on transparency and effective support for their LEAs and school improvement endeavors. And I'd like to read, there are 2 pages of comments that LEAs and schools have sent in regarding these updated processes. I'd like to read a couple of them because they're awesome. They're very good examples of the support that this team is providing. It's me again. Sorry to take more of your time. You're always so helpful. Sorry, I know I should know, but you told me it was okay to ask questions and I don't feel judged by you. Huge compliment. Thank you so much for the conversation and follow-up resources. I appreciate your support. You've all put a lot of work into making this process more clear and supportive. I'm grateful for the effort and the information. Thanks for your response and explanation. Thank you for the hard work on this interesting and fun work. Your team has been responsive, supportive, and easy to collaborate with. We sincerely appreciate the funding which is being used thoughtfully and strategically to support student learning. And finally, thank you so much for your willingness to help us increase our knowledge in this area. You guys are the best. Exclamation point from me. Thank you.
Let's do don't sit down yet. Hold on. Sorry. I was trying to clap and then let me just make sure there aren't any questions before you head back to your seat. Okay, or a comment.
I do have just one question related to the 1003 funding. Have you seen your roles change with all kind of the turmoil in the federal government? Are you seeing any changes, or are you just status quo and doing your thing? Just doing our thing. Great, good. Yeah, a little anxiety. I think we all feel that, right? Yep. Great, thank you.
And I just want to say, I just want to say thank you all for your hard work. In my district, a lot of schools are on school improvement plans, so I think I have the highest percentage of schools on school improvement plans. So I just want to say thank you so much for all of your hard work that you're doing for all of the LEAs and schools in my district. Appreciate you.
Yay! Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'm so glad when we do have someone submit some kind of a highlight, so I appreciate that. Let's move on. I think we're going to come back to the health standard when Jennifer joins us. Is that accurate? Okay. So let's go ahead we're going to move to the early literacy. That's our next item on here. And we'll invite Julie Clark to come up and present that information.
Thank you so much for having me, Julie Clark, P through 12 English Language Arts Coordinator with the Utah State Board of Education, and happy to be here with you today. Andrea, are you pulling up the slides? Sorry, I just want to make sure everybody can see as we go through. Yep, right there. Great. Thank you so much. And I know that most of you received our SB 127 quarterly update, and I wanted to just pull out a few key things that highlight in our update that we had. And the first thing is looking at our educator preparation programs, because I think sometimes we focus a lot on what is happening in our classrooms with our students, but we also want to focus on the work that was part of SB 127 that is having a huge impact in our educator prep programs. And so one of those things is in order for educators to receive a license in special education, elementary education, or early childhood education, they have to take the Utah Foundations of Reading assessment, and they have to pass that. And so a lot of that work comes from, we needed to do some realigning with our educator prep program so that they were learning the science of reading in their coursework so that they could be prepared to pass that assessment. And we have a specialist that works with them. Her name is Sammy Willie. She works with our universities, and 6 of our universities were able to hire a science of reading expert. and she works closely with them in designing their courses. And she couldn't be here today because she's at a conference and she's traveling home. So I am doing this, and this is part of the licensing update that was shared last month in Law and Licensing. And I wanted to point it out here as well in Standards and Assessment. So you can see that our university pass rate for our Utah Foundations of Reading Assessment from the 22-23 school year to the 24-25 has gone up significantly. And this year we had an average passing rate of 90%. So 90% of our teacher candidates were passing the Utah Foundations of Reading Assessment this last year. So we're very excited. And not only that, to receive a passing rate, you have to have a score of 240 or higher. And our average score has also gone up significantly from 242 to 257. So that's super exciting to see that. And then if you'll go to the next slide down, we have broken this out by universities and their average passing rate. So of our universities, we had almost all of them meet that passing rate. We have in board rule that if 75% or less are passing, then they fall into a system of support with Sammy, and they meet with her on what they can do to increase that. And so all of our universities, Westminster, we have masked their data because they had less than 10 participants. We do want to say that they were also below that 75% and are working with Sammy on what they can do to beef up their program to support them with the science of reading. So, but really excited to see not only are they above that 75%, but like significantly higher than that 75% in passing rates. And then the next one breaks down each of our programs individually. So we have the early childhood passing rates, elementary, and special education. We do have some universities, like you can see there, SUU doesn't have an early childhood license that they can, or program that they can participate in, so they don't have data in that program. Yes.
Do you want comments as we go through, or questions, or do you want to wait till the end?
I do have a time for questions at the end, but if you have questions,
Okay,
that's
we'll
up
just,
to you,
I just
Chair.
want to make sure we're.
I'm happy to do
Would you
either
prefer to
way.
go through it and then we'll, okay, let's do that. I just want to make
Either
sure,
way.
because I had a question, but I'm like, let's just kind of set that for this. Okay,
Yeah,
we'll do the
we
questions at the end.
We do have a lot of, some different pieces, so if we did, maybe we could even talk about the work in the universities, take questions.
Okay, let's
and-
do that. Let's
yeah.
do that. So as you get to that breaking point, will you
Yep.
just let us know, are there any questions?
Yeah,
Thank you.
okay, that works. So you can see those different universities and the different programs and the passing rates of the different programs. Another thing that we are doing to highlight and spotlight these universities and the work that they have done is we are awarding them also with the Science of Reading Awards for their efforts, and if they are above that 75% passing rate. So we are recognizing them around the state as well. And this is all about the universities, so I will go ahead and take questions now if you have.
Okay, I just had one question back, if you go back one more slide. One more. No, that's right. No, I'm sorry, Andrea, go down. Yeah, I apologize, that is the one. Where did we start when we started this? What were the percent pass rates?
Yes, so they were, most of them were around the 40 to 50%.
Okay.
And so, and even last year, if you go down to the next slide down, Andrea, so each program could also be in our system of support. So if a program had below the 75% passing rate, so say, like, I'm just gonna randomly pull one out because it's at the top. But, say BYU had an elementary program with less than 75% passing rate, their elementary program would be supported by our system of support. So we look at it that way. And looking at this, last year, we had 50% of the programs would have been supported by our system of support. If we were looking at the 23-24 data. So in 1 year, we had a significant improvement in all of those programs.
Okay. Yeah, that's what and I was curious, it seemed like I could remember that we were significantly lower. So when we set the
Yes.
pass rate at 75%, and then we have these 90%, right? I was just trying to
Yes.
remember what I'm
Yeah.
looking at, so,
Yep.
okay, thank you.
Yes,
Any other
yeah.
comments here? Okay, we can go ahead.
Yeah, okay. And then we'll go on to the next thing. We also wanted to spotlight our regional literacy nights that we are doing around the state. If you'll go to the next slide, Andrea. We have been hosting 7 of them around the, and if you click on that link, we don't have to click on it now, but you guys will have access to the slides. It will take you to our list of where those regional literacy nights are taking place. So if you want to go to the next one, Andrea, I've just kind of put it in a table. And the blue ones have already happened. So we have already done ones in San Juan and Iron and Box Elder. Last week we were in Box Elder and in Juab. And they've been great. We have received extremely positive feedback. We do have an exit survey that we're asking parents to take as they are leaving, and we have had it's like a scale of 1 to 3, and everything has come back as a 3. And we've had parents that have said, thank you so much for having these nights. I have learned so many different things that I can do with my kids at home, and what I can do to talk to them about literacy, and how I can help ask questions about the books that they're reading to get more out of our kids other than like school was great and I didn't learn anything. So we have had some really great feedback. We are looking at we have 3 more coming up. And one on April 9th in Cache, and then in Davis, kind of that south end of Davis in Bountiful, on April 15th, and then also in Ogden on April 16th. So we are super excited about these. And then the next 2 slides just have some pictures of our events that were in San Juan and in Iron School District. And so very excited to kind of have some pictures there. Any questions about our regional literacy nights?
Yes. Hi, Julie. Wondering how did you choose which area? I guess you just kind of tried to go around
Tried to
the
get
state.
just tried to get around the state the best that we could. We are also using our books that so not every LEA participates in the Kids Read Now, and so even though we've purchased those books, we do want to make sure that they get out to the kids. So we did also kind of try to target areas where some of those books haven't been distributed to students because their LEA didn't participate. So trying to get those books into the hands of the kids that are in those areas.
Like in
too.
Iron County, I wondered how your attendance was, and did anybody from Washington County, like, was word sent out around?
Yes,
Okay.
we did get word out to all of our LEA leaders
Okay.
of the events, and our Iron County one, we had about 300
wow.
families participating.
Okay.
We didn't necessarily ask where they were from, but we did have a really high turnout and a lot of people attending.
Okay, but all the LEAs knew. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I wish I had known. I would have tried to come at least to
Yes.
Iron.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions regarding that? Okay, and then the next piece is when we were doing our prep for this meeting, we had Chair Earl asked if I could present a little bit about our reading on grade level and the changes and the impact of how we have gone from being reading on grade level to the new changes that will be impacting with SB 241. Andrea, if you could go back to the slides, that would be great. Yep, just next slide down. Oh, there should be, I sent some updated slides. They might be a different link in the backup. Yeah, it might have, yeah, probably a 1 after it. Yep, that one. Thank you so much. No, it's fine. Thank you. I updated these after the request to share. So.
And I had a number of board members just ask, what is the impact?
Yeah.
They heard a variety of different things, and I thought if we can just get clarity.
Yep.
Then board members can come back and watch this, or community members, so that
Yes.
they know. So,
Yes.
thank you.
Yes, absolutely. So I wanted to start off with reading on grade level. There is no universal definition. So every state kind of determines that on their own, and it is all looked at a little bit differently. So there is no universal definition. I just wanted to make that clear. And then if you go to the next slide, we have been using, and I also want to mention that many states across the country have multiple assessments that their LEAs can take that provides different feedback on, and so they have to kind of create a score where this assessment means this and this assessment means this, and so it is very nice that in Utah we have one assessment that everybody takes, and it's the Acadians, and that is what we are using. That's what we have used to determine reading on grade level. So it's not like we're comparing apples to oranges because everybody is using the same assessment. So that is very nice that we have that as something that we have in our state. I wanted to talk about before we get deep into the reading on grade level, I wanted to share this slide because this slide helps us to understand the different levels of Acadians and where that falls and what those different categories mean. And so Acadians is what we call a screening assessment, and it is used to determine students who are at risk. And it helps us to guide our instruction on focusing on what kind of supports do we need to provide to our students that are falling into these different benchmark areas. And so when we look at our top benchmark area, that above benchmark range, that simply means that those students who are falling in that, when we call it our blue area, our above benchmark, they have a 90 to 99% chance of meeting the benchmark at or above on the next time they are given the assessment. So that's a pretty high success rate. We can pretty much predict that if you fall into that blue area, the next time you take Acadians, you'll likely be at or above benchmark with a 90 to 90% chance. Our at benchmark students, that is our kids that we kind of put in that green area, they have a 70 to 85% chance of meeting the next benchmark. So if they take the assessment, they get a green, 70 to 85% chance they'll be green or blue the next time they take it. When we look at our below benchmark students, without receiving any sort of interventions, they have a 40 to 60% chance of meeting at or above benchmark the next time they take it. And our well below benchmark students without any interventions have a 10 to 20% chance of being at or above. So when we look at this, we look at our students that fall in that well below benchmark area, and we know that we need to provide some intensive supports and interventions to those students in that area to help them fill in any gaps that they're missing so that they can have a better chance of meeting the benchmark. Our students that are in that below benchmark area, we look at providing some very strategic supports for them and identifying what areas they need support in to be able to provide interventions so that they can meet the next benchmark. We still like to keep an eye on our students that are in that at benchmark range because 70% chance is not necessarily great. So we want to ensure, and so we keep an eye on our kids that are in that at benchmark range to ensure that they are still meeting the next benchmark. It doesn't necessarily mean that we have to provide interventions, but we do want to watch them and keep an eye on them because if we do see something start to fall below, then we may need to provide some supports to them to keep them where they're at. So those are the different levels that we are talking about when we talk about our Acadians benchmarks. And again, it is just used to identify students who are at risk and what supports we need to provide to them. So reading on grade level, where this comes into play, if you'll go to the next slide, Andrea. In 2000, prior to 2019, they were gathering data on the different benchmark statuses for students and looking at where are those students and how are they also performing on our RISE assessment, which is based off of our standards. So there was a study that was done, and it is linked there, it's in your backup. And the study found that there were some certain composite scores that also equated to some pretty high correlations with being proficient on RISE, being proficient or above proficient on RISE. So in first grade, that composite score had a 0.64 correlation, which is about a 64%. Second grade had a 69%, and third grade had a 73%. And if you go to the next slide, we can look at those reading composite scores for the Acadience assessment that equated to those percentages were a 205 reading composite score for first grade, a 290 for second grade, and a 410 for third grade. So they had a very high correlation to being able to determine whether or not those students would be proficient in RISE. So we could see if a student was on track to meeting those proficiency standards in RISE on our standards assessment versus the screening that is just focusing on those foundational skills. And so, go ahead, do you have a question?
Yes, I am just wondering how our non-English language learners play into this. How does it work with them?
Yes, so our English language learners, they also take the Acadience assessment, and they also receive a composite score. And so we do look at those scores as, you know, what supports do we need to provide for them as far as interventions go, and English and multilingual language learner supports as well from our multilingual teachers. So we do use this data to also inform our instruction on what supports do they need, and do they need supports by others within the schools as well. So, yeah.
Okay, I just wondered too, like what has the impact been on teachers? Because I've heard, especially from rural teachers in my area, how hard it's been to have so many enter their classrooms. And just wondered if you have numbers and, you know, when they're trying to, you know, they have everybody all together in a classroom.
I didn't pull out our English language learner data for this, but I can get some of that data to share with you as well. We do have a lot of that data in our superintendent's report in the reading section, in the ELA section. So there is some data in there as well. So, yeah. That is why when we were, so if you'll go ahead and go to the next slide, Andrea. So in 2018-19 school year, they started reporting on the school report card the early literacy reading on grade level based off of those composite scores that were determined to have a high correlation to proficiency on RISE. So it isn't, if you'll go to the next one, the next slide, there is a little disclaimer when you're on the school report card that reading on grade level and growth are not factored into the actual scoring of the school report card, but it is placed on there for people to see, just as transparency on where students are at. And so, and then if you'll go down to the next slide, this brought, and then, you know, in 2022, SB 127 passed, and the language that was in the code for reading for the goal said that in third grade 70%, our goal was 70% third grade level proficiency on the state administered reading assessment. So typically when we talk about proficiency, we are talking about students who are both in the and above range. And so if we were looking at that as our goal in 2022, we already had 70% at or above benchmark. So technically not a strenuous goal if we're already at 70%. So that is why we were looking at reading on grade level. And it was those students that were hitting that 410 composite score on Acadians, and that was a 46%, which would make more sense for a strenuous goal. So that's why we were looking at reading on grade level. So we provide this. We were providing this document to LEAs, where it showed where those composite scores landed and how it was determined for reading on grade level based off of that previous study that was done. There were potential causes for confusion for those previous cut scores because in first grade, well, they were also talking about Lexile scores, and Lexiles and equating to composite scores cause a lot of confusion. And then the other confusion that comes into play is first grade was in the at range, so the green range, where second and third grade were in the above range. So there wasn't a clear definition or clear defining point that was equal across grade levels. So the board did an amazing job studying this and learning about our reading on grade level and the goal for SB 127. And if you'll go down to the next slide, you decided to define this in board rules so that it became more consistent for our LEAs and gave more direction for them as well. And what it was determined was that the cut score would be 405 for reading on grade level, which put it for third grade, that put it in that above that defining point between at and above benchmark. So any student who was in that above benchmark was considered reading on grade level for our goal. And then we applied that to first grade and second grade as well. So if you'll go to the next slide, Andrea, you can see that this did help provide some clarity for our LEAs. It removed the confusion of having the Lexile conversion. It provided that clear cut score point between the at and above benchmark. It gave LEAs the opportunity to talk to their educators about aim for blue. We want to shoot for getting more students in that blue category, and it provided that guidance for teachers as well in the classroom, so they knew what they were looking for. Another thing that it did is when they go onto their Acadians platform, they could clearly identify their percentage of students that were in that above benchmark category instead of having to do like a download of the data and see how many students were 410 and higher. They can go on their platform and immediately see what percentage of students were in that above benchmark range. And it provided clarity for that statewide goal in SB 127. So
once again, the
yes.
blue, going from the
Yes.
green to the blue, was what percent that we needed or that was predicted? It was a
yes.
90%? For the students that.
90,
yeah.
yes, the blue means that they will have a 90 to a 99% chance of meeting the next benchmark.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
yeah, yes. And we know that that is like a really high thing to shoot for teachers, but when you can guarantee that a student can meet the next benchmark with 90 to 95% chance, that's really comforting for a teacher to see, and we can make sure that students are meeting those benchmarks. It provides some reassurance, right? And if you'll go to the next slide. So Darren Nelson, when he was here, after the board set those cut scores, we had another study done. It's also linked in backup so that you are able to read it. And what they did is they took the cut scores that were determined for reading on grade level and what percentage of students are demonstrating proficiency or above proficiency in RISE. And so the correlation was very, very high. So if a first grade student was meeting that 208, so that above benchmark range, they had a 78% chance of being proficient on RISE when they were taking RISE in third grade. That false pass rate right there, it kind of put a little caveat down there. These are the students that are predicted to pass RISE because they were proficient, or they hit that 208 cut score, but they did not meet the above or at or above proficiency on RISE. So that's the percentage of students that were hitting the cut score but not demonstrating proficiency in RISE. So I put that on there for you to see as well. Second grade was an 80%, and then third grade was an 81.5%. So the results from that study, I just kind of pulled their little, what they, their comment was in the results, where they indicate that all three USBE cut scores perform relatively well and have accuracies of 78% or above. So that's a really high correlation to being able to demonstrate proficiency on our RISE assessment, where we're looking to ensure that students are knowing and understanding our standards so that we have set in ELA. And then if you want to go ahead and go to the next slide, I have put this data in here for you to see over the years, where this is showing our third grade reading on grade level, and then it's the percentages of the students that are proficient on RISE, and then the NAEP as well. So NAEP is fourth grade, but the other two are third grade. So I wanted you to see how all of those numbers align fairly well and are fairly close to the same number. So I'm taking this from Darren's playbook. He would always say that Utah is a truth-telling state because our data aligns very closely and aligns very well. Our percentages are very similar and very close. I did put the little asterisk down there for the 23-24 school year because that was where we changed the metric from being 410 to 405 for the third grade reading on grade level. And then the double one for the 24-25 because that was our first year of having the new RISE scores set, the score setting set for this last year, where our new RISE assessment aligns with our new standards in ELA. So that is why those are a little bit, the metrics were just a little bit different, were changed. And then if we'll go ahead and go to the next slide. So SB 241 just passed. And in 241, they have given a definition for reading on grade level. And so what they have defined as reading on grade level is the at and above benchmark for the benchmark reading assessment, which would be Acadians. So this is combining our, the greens and the blues, and they have changed the goal to be 80% of students meeting that reading on grade level, so at or above, by the end of the year of 2030. And so I have pulled the data into the next slide to kind of compare those percentages of where we are sitting and where we have been. So beginning, so I've added those into there, and you can see that in the 2021 school year, we were at 69%, and we are now at 70.5%. So we've gained about 1.5 percentages in our at and above. But I do want to point out, like, you know, we've been focusing on that, get your students to above benchmark, and we've had almost a 6% growth. You can see from the 44% in the as reading on grade level, so we're getting our students into that above benchmark category to 50%. So we are doing a really good job of ensuring more students are being solidly proficient in that above benchmark category, where we haven't necessarily seen that growth in the at and above benchmark category. Does that make sense? So we have more kids in blue, less kids in green, but we still need to move more students from the below and well below benchmark into that area. And so our next steps, if you'll kind of go on, some things that, you know, are immediately going through my mind is once superintendency has had a chance to message this out to the superintendents, we will need to be providing some clear messaging to our LEA literacy leaders as well. So we will follow up with their messaging and support to them. We will need to update our guidance documents that we have had, like where we showed you the bars where the scores are at. We'll need to update those guidance documents. We'll also need to update the school report card documents and platforms and the platform for there. And then, you know, when we have the change in metrics, we have the change in outcomes. So it does look like, you know, we were previously reporting out to national sites that we had about 50% of our students reading on grade level. Now that will be 70%. Does that make sense? Because they changed the definition. So our outcomes will look different. So we'll need to make sure that as we message that out, we are messaging that we changed how we are measuring our students so that we're reporting correct information to them. And then just looking at how can we support our LEAs, constantly looking at what we can do to support them in their messaging with their teachers and with their communities as well. So, and then the next one is just any questions.
Thank
So
you.
that's a lot of information, I know.
Okay, I have two questions, and then we'll see if there's anyone else that does.
Yep.
And thank you for doing this. I know that was kind of a tedious, right? Go back through the history over
Yes.
the last several years, all the studies and everything that have been done. But I think it's relevant when you get to the last document to be able to understand where we came from, why
Yes.
we chose what we chose, and then where we are today.
Yes.
And my understanding, and you can tell me if you think this is maybe off, but my understanding is the students that are at benchmark or above benchmark, we still want to focus there, but we're not seeing a lot of movement in that lower, those lower performing students. And that's really where I think the intention of Senator Milner was, is this is where we want that attention, primarily focused, continue to move students above that forward, but these are the students we really need to be focusing on. Is that maybe how you understood that too?
Yes, and when I look at the difference between SB 127 and 241, some of the things that come to light for me, and I think she kind of reiterated this in her comments that she shared when she was in her committee meetings, but SB 127 was a very tier 1 focus. So that general education, what can we do to support teachers and getting them the knowledge of the science of reading, helping them to adjust their instructional practices, and what can we do to make tier 1 instruction better in this and aligned with the science of reading. And now we're focusing on our students that need those interventions and those supports. So what can we do in our tier 2 and in our tier 3 categories? So to support those students exactly like what you're talking about. Yeah.
And just one other question. Other states, where, I know they fluctuate, and others are using the same screener. Where, are we comparable to other states? We were higher than before.
Yes,
right?
yes.
With the 405, but
I
yeah.
would say, so because everybody's definition on of
Yeah.
reading on grade level is a little bit different, when we try to compare state to state and using different metrics, it makes it a little bit difficult to say, oh yeah, we're doing better than this state or this state. But I would say that we are slightly above where other states are at in our outcomes. And we can use that based off of our NAEP data as we are a little bit higher. We're towards, I think we were in the top 6, or top 8, I can't remember. 8th grade was one and 4th grade was another. And so when we're in the top that way, that's where we can kind of look and see where we compare across states because everybody's receiving the same assessment, and we can see that we are performing higher on that than most other states.
Okay.
So,
Okay, thank you.
and I think we're taking the NAEP again this year. Is that right, Leah? I can't remember.
Even year, right? Are they every even year?
I can't remember.
Okay.
I feel like it's every 2 years, and like we didn't take it last year, so potentially
Yeah.
this year.
But they don't usually report out for quite a while.
Yes,
but
it
they-
takes,
yeah.
it seems like it takes a year to report out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
right.
So,
Okay, if there's no other questions, thank you, I appreciate this. Now we can just say, go look at standards and assessment meeting from this time to this
yes,
time, right?
Yes, yes.
Because
And
it is complex.
It is
Yeah.
complex and it is a lot of information, but I appreciate the opportunity to be able
Yeah.
to share and educate and inform, because I think when we know more, we can do more and we can support better, so.
I mean, I think the messaging isn't, all of a sudden we jump to 70%, right?
Right,
The messaging is, we
correct.
have students that still need help.
Yes,
And I think that's where, like you
Mhm.
said, Senator Milner was headed. Let's focus
Mhm.
quite a bit of attention on these students that are in that,
Yes.
those other tiers, 2 and 3. So, thank you, I appreciate you putting that together.
Thank
ahead.
you. Thank you for all of this. Always getting the reading scores and all of the assessments put together. My brain is so confusing often. And I just appreciate, Senator Milner and talking about something that I say often. I said this often when we were doing our strategic planning. We're never going to get to those levels of academic excellence that we want to get to if we don't support those that are falling behind. We have to, rising tides, whatever the ship thing that we ever, it's like we need to focus on helping all of our students, and it doesn't take away from other students when we're doing that, but we have to be, if we're gonna get to the scores that we want, we have to help those that are struggling and need those interventions. And so I'm excited to see how we plan and strategize on how to do that, because I think it's a huge task and those goals are massive. And I hope that folks don't think that because there's this really aspirational goal that we have by 2030, it means that we're not doing great work now. Like, we're doing outstanding work now. We have some awesome goals to get to that 80%. And it'll be exciting to see how that plays out in determining those strategies to support all of our students. So thank you.
Okay, oh, do you have a question?
Yeah, I wondered what the study showed, like how many schools pull kids out, do kind of a center thing based on reading levels so that they can work on things. I came from a state where I grew up, where our classes were leveled. And so it felt like growing up in that you could move everybody at the same pace. But I just wonder, because things have changed so much now, right, with
Yes.
laws and
yes.
how that works.
So the way that we look at it is, we give our Acadians to help us identify what students need those supports. And then from there, we like to do a more diagnostic assessment where we can see and identify exactly what skills or what supports are needed by every individual student. And then after we give that diagnostic assessment, we can kind of pull our groups of students that are together or that need the same supports together and do an intervention. And then as they receive those interventions, the students that are getting it and moving, and they may need to move into another group. And we really talk to our teachers a lot about our LEA leaders, and hopefully they're passing the messages along to their teachers. But the importance of PLC, where they are looking at their students' data, their progress monitoring, and what interventions they're providing, and really having fluid groups where I like to kind of joke that sometimes students would get stuck in tier 2 or tier 3 prison where it was like, you're here and you're never getting out. But as they are making the progress, one student may make progress at a different rate than another student, and they need to move out, and we need to provide more intensive for these students, but these students we can move to this other group because now they need to work on this skill, and so just having those fluid groups and constantly looking at that data to help them drive their instruction and to provide the interventions. So it may not look so much like a pull-out program anymore. We do have lots of LEAs. I know Washington School District does does an amazing job. If you want to see interventions done really, really well, they do an amazing job of it, where they call it the win time, where it's what every student needs, you know, what I need time. And they kind of flood a grade level with all of the supports from several aides, several interventionists, and coaches and teachers, and every student is in a group working on what they need at the same time. And so it minimizes how much a student is out of the classroom, you know, but because we can tackle it in a 30 to 45-minute session where all students are receiving instruction on their supports. So they could, you know, our students that are above are receiving some extension type activities and work where, you know, and they're constantly looking at those groups and shifting the groups around and getting kids into what they need. And so it's done really well. It's more of a fluid type thing as opposed to like you're pulled out and you're in here for an hour and then we're pulling you out for this for another hour, you know, so and a lot of LEAs are going to that model where they can, you know, tackle a grade level at a time and get those supports to them. So
Okay, thank you. We
Yeah.
appreciate you coming and visiting with us and sharing, updating us on what's going on. It looks like there's 3 in northern Utah, so if any,
Yes.
right, parent
yes,
nights?
we would love to see you and
literacy
have you
nights.
out and have you come
Yeah.
and join us for those nights because they are amazing. We have the teachers are providing the sessions for parents to come to, and they're leaving with more knowledge and supports that they can help their kids with. And I think that is just what they need, you know, and they know that they're supported. So
We did change the model on that. Are you seeing more engagement from families where you guys have
Yes.
kind of taken over that? And
yes. Mm-hmm.
so
We
great.
are, yes, and we have a, so I think what you're talking about is we have a community engagement piece that is separate from our regional literacy nights, where parents can join caregiver sessions, and we have LEAs that are joining to learn about what they can do to promote more community engagement within their LEAs too. So we have I think we have like, I want to say, I don't have the exact numbers. I don't want to give false information, but I want to say that we started with about 130 schools that had joined to learn about what they can do to support and engage their families more. And then our caregiver sessions have been very well attended by parents as well.
So this is two separate
Yes,
tracks
uh-huh.
that you're going
Yeah,
on. Okay,
yes,
great.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Yes, you're welcome. I'm just going to check real quick. Do we have Christine Cook on then for public comment, or was she not able to get on?
You wanna do, I texted her, she's on. I told her we'd do it right before that agenda item.
And I
You
think
wanna
we'll
go
do
back
that.
to agenda
Yes,
item?
let's do that.
Yeah,
Let's
she's-
have,
She's on, so.
okay, we'll take that public comment and then we'll go right to our, did I say another name? Christine Fairbanks. My apologies. And then we'll go to 1.3, which is our health education standard. And if Christine is on, do you want to unmute?
Hello.
There you go. Okay, you've got 2 to 3 minutes, so go ahead and give your comments.
Great. Yeah, my name is Christine Cook Fairbanks. I'm the Education Policy Fellow at Sutherland Institute, a public policy think tank. Our team has done a lot of work on the success sequence over the past few years, and I believe it's really important information to share with everyone, but especially students in school who are making these really important decisions now or very soon. And so we're really grateful for the thoughtful work of the board and this committee on these draft standards. The draft standards, as they're written, are clearly aimed at helping students understand this data. We think they could be strengthened by adding an emphasis on marriage and its role in the success sequence. So in submitting comments online, we offered some suggestions. For Health Standards 1, adding a part that says, identify how marriage improves health, economic, and other outcomes for adults and children, including consequences for when this part of the framework is missing. For health standards 2, we recommended a small tweak that allows for meaningful discussion on each part. So for part A, research and discuss the correlation between following each part of the success sequence and the effects on financial stability. And we think doing this may allow better emphasis on each of the 3 individual parts as needed. So we just think that these simple tweaks, could add some clarity about the success sequence and strengthen its understanding for this group of students. So thank you so much.
All right, thanks, Christine. I think, you submitted those in the public comment, is that right?
I did.
Okay. All right, Jody Parker, we will turn the time over to you. I'm just going to set a time framework here for us, just because we have some other items. I'm envisioning this to be concluded by around 11. If I can set an expectation, maybe it won't take that long. I'm just envisioning that, okay? So that we've got some breakdown times, so go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Jody Parker. I'm the Health Education Specialist for the Utah State Board of Education. We have a waiver from our normal policy for these standards. In the 2025 legislative session, HB 281 passed, requiring the state board to establish health curriculum requirements that include the success sequence as defined. Success sequence means a 3-pronged framework for youth and young adults that encourages completing at least high school education and pursuing further educational opportunities, obtaining full-time employment, and having children within a healthy and stable marriage. As a result of the bill, the board approved a waiver last fall for an approved standard revision process to meet this legislated requirement. The waiver has 4 steps. We convene a writing committee to revise the impacted core standards. We release for 30-day public review. We revise the standards based on public review, and we submit for board approval, and that's where we are today. These draft standards were written by Health Education Committee, a writing committee, and we released the first draft on January 23rd through February 21st for public comment. We received over 1,000 comments, and I would like to remind this committee that these standards are added to existing core standards for health education. Our approved Utah Health Education Core Standards have a goal as the goal at the beginning of our standards says, the goal of health education is to support parents and families in developing healthy, responsible students who have the knowledge, skills, and dispositions to work together in an inclusive manner to think critically, participate in a variety of activities that lead to lifelong healthy behaviors. The draft standards meet this goal of health education by leveraging the skills of health education, such as decision making. So we had an original draft, which is in your backup, and then we did revise that draft based on public feedback. We had 44% of our feedback was concerned with the definition one way or another. And then another pretty common theme with feedback was we'd start with define. We wanted Health 1, the first version said define success sequence. And there was a lot of comments that wasn't very rigorous. So we did change that as well as and include a skill. So identify how decision making. We put the definition as the root of standards, both in Health 1 and Health 2, rather than the task. So in Health 1, we now have the explore success sequence framework defined as completing high school education, pursuing further educational opportunities, obtaining full-time employment, having children within a healthy, stable marriage, and as a connection to stability and well-being. To financial stability and well-being. And then there are 2 pieces to doing that. Identify how decision-making related to school attendance, engagement, goal setting can influence future educational career opportunities, including potential consequences. And reminder, Health 1 they're 12 or 13 years old here. And then recognize that personal outcomes are influenced by various factors and individuals may choose different life paths. In Health 2, we are analyzing, so it's high school, students are between typically 15 and 16. Analyze the correlation of the success sequence framework, same definition, as a connection to financial stability and well-being, And now our high school students will research and discuss the correlation between following the success sequence and the effects on financial stability, and then formulate a personal plan that incorporates educational, career, relationship goals aligned with principles of the success sequence, planning for potential challenges, supports, life-changing circumstances, and individual choices. The HB 281 did two things. It added success sequence, but then it also added a requirement that we talk about the consequences of not following the success sequence. So that's why that is in both standards. That was another thing that came up very frequently in public comment, is there was concern over talking about challenges, but that is in code. And so to meet the code, this is how the writing team thought that would be a personal plan that talks about the barriers and the challenges is something that's very appropriate for a high school student to do. So that is the work that was done. In your backup, you can see all 1,076 submissions of public comment. And then we also summarized that data for you and pulled out a couple of the compelling comments that led to the revisions between draft 1 and draft 2.
Go ahead. I would say that, thank you. I feel like the response that came back, or at least the recommendation that we got, was better than, do you know what I mean? Responsive, I guess, and shouldn't say better, but it was responsive to the public comment. So I do appreciate that. So anyway.
It looks like Christine is still online. I haven't seen, I thought Sutherland's recommendations.
It was in, sorry, she did text me and just say it was in their submission on she didn't send it to us. It was submitted with the rest of the public comment. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, with the Qualtrics. Yeah.
Just in comment?
If you look on your board backup, sorry, may I?
Yes, go ahead.
In your backup, there is one of the items says public feedback. They were one of the final submissions, so you have to go clear down to like line 1,000.
Which is on what page? There's 200 pages, right?
No, this one's an Excel file.
Yeah, I just wanted to just address a couple of the things that were in the public comment. And I do think that the success sequence in and of itself is a probabilistic, or probably this could happen kind of a thing, versus deterministic. So if we don't get the language quite right, I hope we can get to that point that it's not, this is going to be what happens, but these are possibilities, right? It's kind of like what we do with any other risk prevention. Please wear your helmet, put the seatbelt on, right? But that doesn't mean you're not going to get hurt if you're in a accident or whatever. The framework is more of a something to kind of look at and consider versus your life's going to be perfect. If I heard that over and over in the comments, that don't give kids the impression that their life will be perfect if they do these 3 things. No, but the research shows that the outcomes long term, based on probability, right, are going to increase in certain areas. So I just wanted to maybe bring that up to the public, because I think that is a fair argument or question. And also there is just the way, some of the wording we may need to look at just to make sure it's clear that was some of the feedback.
Whoever's driving, it's, yes, that one right there.
Okay, are there any comments to the recommended standards then?
Just a question.
Yeah, go ahead. Board member, or Vice Chair.
Yeah, so, and I texted you about this. So the definition is in code. Because as I read through all of the concerns, a lot of it seemed to be that correlation between putting the children in the definition before the marriage and family. Even though it was the same line, it was saying having children as part of a healthy family. But because the definition is in code, we maintain that alignment to make sure that we're staying within the law. Is that accurate?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, and the writing committee, especially after looking at the 1,000 comments, it definitely became, it was a very lively conversation ultimately, if we want our educators to see what the code is and that requirement, the writers felt very strongly that we need to tell them that code. Otherwise, a classroom teacher may not know what that three-prong framework is in code if it is not written very clearly for them. So ultimately, that was the decision for being precise and saying word for word what the codified definition is inside the root of the standard.
Okay. As I looked at the comments and went through, I had some amendments that I wanted to make a motion to look at. So could we pull those up and see if they still fall in line with code? It seemed often in comments that people felt like marriage or having children was being pushed on students. And I don't think that's the intent, to say you have to get married or you have to have children in life. But it is to show the data-driven studies that if you choose to have children, waiting until you're in a marriage, in a stable, gosh, the poverty statistics, the 97% success rate, teaching those things are so valuable to see. If you have a high school diploma, full-time work, and you are married before you have children, 97% of the time you're not in poverty. Those are huge things to teach, just as our role is here to educate them on best chances for success. Thank you for all your work on this. Just want to look at these amendments and see. Because I just wondered if it wasn't clear that we weren't pushing
do you wanna
marriage
just-
and children,
yep.
but that it was the steps.
Let's look at Health 1, and
Yeah.
you can discuss what you did there, and then we'll just go from one to the other. Does that make sense? So let's look at Health 1 first, and
Okay,
Remind
so-
me again, Health 1 is 12 and 13?
7th, 8th.
7th,
Yes,
8th grade, 12.
typically, depending on the LEA, some have it in 7th grade, so the students would be somewhere between ages 12 and 14.
12 and 14, okay, thank you.
Okay, so I want to make a motion that the health education standards be amended as follows. Explore the health success sequence framework as a data-driven framework associated with financial stability and personal well-being. This includes completing a high school education, obtaining full-time employment, and choosing to marry before having children. Analyze data on how the timing and sequencing of education, employment, and family formation are associated with economic stability and childhood outcomes and are identified in research as protective factors against poverty. B, identify how decision-making related to school engagement and goal setting can influence future educational and career opportunities. C, recognize that regardless of individual circumstances, students can be empowered to secure a successful life by completing their education, planning for a career, and making thoughtful choices about relationships and family life.
Okay. So we'll give board members just a minute to read that, and then if you have recommendations or thoughts on that.
Cheryl, may I make one comment?
Yes, go ahead.
Striking including potential consequences does put us at a little bit of a challenge with the other part of the code requiring that we talk about the consequences.
And I'm fine to, maybe we need to put that back, we should put that back in. I agree, especially after the discussion that you've brought today.
We have a checklist that has every single code and we tied a standard to every single code.
Okay.
So we would need something for that piece.
Okay.
That's my only.
Okay. Is there anything else that you see that changed anything?
We did change the definition. I mean, if it's clearly defined in code, I like how you have it written better. I think it aligns better with the concerns of all the comments that we got. But it
So-
does change the code language.
AAG done. I just think, and that was the biggest thing in all the comments from anybody that commented, where this seems to reflect better, is do you feel that there's a problem with that? Could we put just a reference to the code, but then articulate it this way. That does seem to be where we had the biggest hang up.
Assistant Attorney General Angela Doan, I do recommend staying with the code definition as is defined, and then also put in the code if you want to reference to it. But the definition as it's written is having children within a healthy and stable family and marriage. So it's the red crossed out language is exactly pulled from the code. And so you could also just put UCA section and then the code, which is 53G-10402-1D. So we
Okay.
could put that
Okay.
in so that would be able to cover that.
Jody, you're shaking your head no.
In my experience, a teacher's not going to look it up. If you want them to know the code, you need to put it in.
Okay.
To say very directly
And
and
I guess
bluntly.
just that it's saying the same thing, it's just that it's worded differently in order to create clarification, and that's where the question comes in.
I agree. I
Yeah.
mean, that reads really nicely. I agree. And Chair, I'm not saying to remove the red text. I'm saying
Okay.
to have that in there and also include the code, so that if there's questions that come back and say, and the question to USBE is, why did you write it this way? It could be that this is already defined in code.
Okay. Go ahead.
I think that I prefer the code piece, personally, because, well, for the reasons that was discussed, but also because I really like that the piece about completing at least a high school education and pursuing further education opportunities. You know, we're not saying that everyone needs to get a bachelor's degree, but I think that there is so much data and evidence that even a certificate or, you know, an apprenticeship or whatever, furthering your educational opportunities after high school can show the financial stability of an individual and a family can change exponentially when you have that. And I would hate to see that piece go.
So if I'm understanding you, we would need to, I'm just trying to create clarity here, we'd need to strike, this includes completing that whole sentence right there, and then just taking out the red on the top, right, the stricken language.
Yeah, that could work if you end the sentence as, you keep the red language and then you continue as a data-driven framework associated with financial stability and personal well-being, period, and then strike the next.
The last sentence.
Okay. I'm
Okay.
fine with that. I was just trying to respond to all the comments,
Jody,
but
do you have
I'm fine with that.
One thing, you would have framework in twice.
Yeah,
It has framework at
that's
the
true.
beginning and the end. Just one tech, like,
Oh, so we'd need to take it out maybe at the top so it flowed better?
it would just read, explore the success sequence framework as a data-driven framework.
Yeah, that doesn't.
Like you say it
flow well.
twice. Just my own.
So we
Notice.
just need to leave in explore the success sequence as a data-driven, right, framework,
That'd be
okay.
fine. I would just
Is
say,
someone
don't
drive-
say framework twice.
Okay.
Maybe as data-driven? As being data-driven? Would that?
looks better. That's better.
Oh, yeah, much better.
Okay, any other comments at least on that first piece?
Could we add the code after defined? So explore the success sequence as a data-driven framework defined in code as,
53G-10402.
so that people know that this is why we have this kind of wonky mixed up thing, is because it's code. So can you do that after defined in, and then put the code number?
53G 10204
402.
or 402? 204 civics, right?
Do we put UCA in our, do we put UCA in our standards?
Okay, so we've got the first part of the standard. Okay, let's take a look at, do we want to vote on that? Is that, or do we want to just, you want to do this whole thing? What does the committee prefer?
Well, I would ask that we put attendance back in, attendance and engagement, because we're pushing, we're talking about this attendance problem that we have, and teachers can't teach children who are not there.
Okay, so
So-
you're wanting a comma between there? I
Yeah.
guess I would look at engagement as that's encompassing. I didn't want it to be just out there by itself. Does that make sense? That's why the engagement's there, because attendance in and of itself, you're just asking for
So
a
many
comma.
are doing online.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
There's people who could do all their education at home, especially now that everything's on Canvas.
Yeah.
You don't even have to be there and you can engage. But
So if we
I
have
think-
both, I'm fine with that. Attendance in and of itself.
Yeah, I want.
Okay.
Did you catch that?
Want
Oh,
both.
We have financial stability and personal well-being. Would you rather have it remain as a connection or associated with? Which one would you prefer? Does that make sense?
yes. What does the committee
As a
prefer?
connection to financial stability or associated with? I think as a connection's fine. And personal. Well, but do we want personal well-being or just well-being?
Yeah, you don't have a preference, Jody?
Health education is definitely personal. If it's
Yeah, I think personal well-being, personally. No other comments on that? Okay. So we'll do the personal well-being then. Okay, let's,
But then you wanted to add attendance and engagement, so they want to add.
Are we gonna do this in pieces? It feels like we should just do
would you like to vote on the
first
top?
paragraph, then A, B, C.
We can do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do it. Okay, so we are looking at the first paragraph. It states, this is H1 HD Human Development, right? HD stands for Human Development. So Health 1, Human Development 10, explore the success sequence as a data-driven framework defined in section 53G 10.402(1)D as completing at least a high school education and pursuing further educational opportunities, obtaining full-time employment, and having children within a healthy and stable family and marriage as a connection to financial stability and personal well-being. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Board member, did I hear you? Wait, okay, all right, that was unanimous. Sorry, I just didn't hear it. Okay, and we will move to A. So A reads. Just a second. Okay. And so A reads, analyze data on how the timing and sequencing of education, employment, and family formation are associated with something important.
We lost it.
Just a second.
Where did it
If
go?
you're online, hang on
Oh.
just 1 minute.
Wait, where did it go?
Economic stability and childhood outcomes.
they're on health 2, not health 1. That's the problem.
Yeah, we need to go up to Health 1. This is Health 2.
Yeah, you scroll down a little.
So we're chunking out the standards into bits.
Okay, there we go. Oh, yeah, maybe she didn't catch that, weird. So on A, it says, analyze data on how the timing and sequencing of education, employment, and family formation are associated with economic stability and childhood outcomes and are identified in research as protective factors against poverty. Any comments?
I have a comment. I personally liked the draft from staff a little bit better. And I think it was when Member Wood asked a question about what age group this is. I'm not sure what kind of, if I'm the educator and I'm in health, I'm like, what kind of data and, how am I teaching students about analyzing data on the timing of the sequences? Like, it feels pretty complex for that age. So, but it feels a lot better to, if the goal is to have them understand, it feels like it's better to have them identify how decision-making related to school attendance, engagement, and goal setting can influence future education and career opportunities, including potential consequences. That to me, whenever we do standards, I put myself in the, sitting there in front of a classroom of 7th graders and I'm like, analyze data on how, it just feels like a little more complex for that age group. But I don't know if that's something, I don't teach health, so I'm not sure, but that would be my assessment.
I guess I I think the data that's there has to do with the reason why you're reading it in the first place, why
But
we're
so
looking
if
at
you're,
it.
if you're saying analyze data, like educators can also just be like, well, we'll find whatever data. You know what I mean? I don't know. Like,
But I would say that the one in A only really encompasses school attendance, engagement, and goal setting, how it can influence future educational career opportunities. I don't know if it's specific enough to tackle, like, the family formation. Like, it's not touching on the third part of the success sequence, I guess. So
And I think the childhood outcomes are important. So to say that
seventh
seventh and
graders.
eighth graders,
Yeah,
for seventh graders at 12 years old.
They're 12. How are they?
I do.
14, most of them
Okay,
are
so-
14.
So I do know, I do have a question. Within CTE or health or any of those, like, cause I know, I go off what my mom teaches, and she in middle school or junior high teaches, I mean, they have to take home those babies, right? Is it the crying baby thing?
That's typically a human development or
Human
child
development.
class,
Right.
which is a high school course.
high school.
Okay, well, okay, I don't know, granted, not to call them out, but, I'm just wondering if there are other areas of, you know, those health or child development or, family and consumer studies or something where they are getting also some of those components of, you know, families, family units. I know that that's one of them because I remember looking at those standards, families, family units, and those pieces. Because I feel like if we can keep, the idea here is to help students understand that if you follow this trajectory, you're going to have better outcomes in your life, right? And so if we really want those students to understand and learn that, I think the less complex we make it, and maybe folks will feel more comfortable knowing that students are also learning about families and family units and that in other areas.
Okay, so fair enough on the data. What if we just put, and you just said it, I think, understand how the timing is important. I think the timing piece is
Yeah, maybe it doesn't need to be analyze data, but just understand,
May
like,
I?
introduce them to.
Understand's a very hard thing to grade. I would.
Well, or.
So what word would you put
I would
there?
love a word that's actionable.
Teach,
Teachers are going to use whatever word we end up with, and that's how they
Explore.
explore words. It just has to be
Identify.
If you're making the
what about identify or explore, which
if we are making the rubric
discuss?
to know if a student learned,
Discuss.
we need a word that we can measure.
I like discuss.
So
Two.
7.
So in Strand 1, Health Foundations and Protective Factors, we use research factors. So are you, because you wanted them to analyze data, do you want them to research what? I mean, so that,
Does the bottom one have research?
well, the bottom one would be the high school.
Yes, I know. That's why I'm thinking the research thing versus either discuss or identify.
I think I was looking at, just what the key statistics from the success sequence when I was thinking about identifying in research, that 97% success rate and the poverty gap where 52% of young adults who missed all 3 steps end up in poverty. Like, are those provided so that they just see those, and then that's reinforced in high school as they're a little older? So I don't know what your suggestions are to
Well, we have discuss, identify, what was the other one?
explore.
Explore. And then research. Research felt like it was a little bit older one on this topic. What do you think, Jody? Any of those stand out to you?
I'm pulling up Bloom's.
Okay.
Which would stick, so, in
With the
health-
intent to
Yeah. So,
introduce,
yes,
right?
our other words, if we
versus-
want to stay in the same, which we're in an application place with our other words, that we use, practice, apply, that's kind of weird for that one. Identify, explain would be actionable.
Let's do explain. That one's a
Okay.
good one. And then you don't have to be into the gathering all the data and, you know, where you, it's explain why the timing's important and they can use, so, okay. Do you want to make that as an amendment?
Okay, so I will, how should,
Okay, well, I guess if we put explain in there, unless there's anybody that would like something different. Okay, I'm not hearing anything. Let me read through it again. So explain how the timings and sequencing of education, employment, and family formation are associated with economic stability and childhood outcomes and are identified in research as protective factors against poverty. Okay,
My only question would be,
Yeah.
what does childhood outcomes mean?
childhood
Like them as
outcomes?
a child or the outcomes of
they're-
your children?
of children and families, I would think it would be
Okay.
their
Yeah.
children.
I mean, that's what the research is around. It's if the risks that are associated with children that,
No, yeah, no, I understand that part.
okay.
I'm just saying like childhood outcomes to me could mean like the student as a child or their future children. I'm trying to just make
Oh,
that
yeah,
clear.
sure.
Yeah, I just
Okay.
don't know if they're saying like your future children or are they saying?
I think, I guess because the research is specific to childhood outcomes and not, do you know what I'm saying? I think that they would be looking at the research, not necessarily, at least from my understanding. Someone correct me if I'm
I-
wrong. That's how I
I
read
mean,
it.
if I have a question about it, some of our educators might, so I'm just wanting to make it clear. Does anyone know
You
what
have a
that means?
suggestion there?
Assistant Attorney General Angela Doan. It's not a legal question, but the way I understand childhood outcomes is when we're looking at adverse childhood effects on ACEs scores. And so what the research is talking about, if you do these 3 steps in life, then you can reduce adverse childhood effects on your future children. But it's understanding that moving forward, right? So they should be able to explain that if I choose these things, this is going to help with all these factors in my life.
Okay,
Hold on one second.
all right, we're holding on a second.
Hold on. Just
Is
going
there a
back and forth
suggestion
between
for
the first one
clarity?
and the.
I think on, well, I'll wait.
I just feel like family formation feels like it covers it, so it's like explain how the timing and sequencing of education, employment, and family formation are associated with economic stability outcomes and are identified in research as protective factors against poverty. I just don't know why we need that and childhood outcomes.
I kind of feel strongly about the childhood outcomes because we just completed all of our human trafficking, all of our,
No, I understand, but I'm just saying as a seventh grade health teacher, and I'm looking at these standards, I'm trying to figure out how to make sure that they're
Yeah.
learning this. That's great for I totally get where you're coming from on that piece, but it just feels like a definition that could be also confused. It's like saying like,
you're just saying because they're too close to childhood themselves?
yeah,
Okay,
Is there a way to say something, because it's, I mean, is it just,
risk
it's
factors or
stability in
something?
general? I mean, economic stability also outlines to just like stronger families that produce healthier children that are just more resilient and succeed better in life.
I hear what you're saying, Member Real. Like, I feel like childhood outcomes is the fruit of the success sequence, though.
Should it say-
Education, employment, family formation, and for the goal that there is economic stability, so that family formation, if that route is chosen, that the childhood outcome is at its optimal condition. Childhood outcomes is the result of the success sequence, and that's the goal, is that we understand that certain steps allow generational security, generational wealth, generational success, building the legacy. It's all of these, ideals that we would hope and probably and try to advocate for our next generation. So I like childhood outcomes there. It makes sense. And I know, well, how do you define that? Well,
I wonder if like we said something like, I think in one of the comments here, they said outcomes for adults and children.
So there
It
you
just
would
is
like to
way,
put,
it's like childhood outcomes is just vague to me. It's not that I don't care about the principle of it or understand the research, it's just really vague way of saying it. So it's like, instead, maybe we could say something, there was, one of the commenters said, they said outcomes for adults and children. And then that is more encompassing too of like you as a child, but also your future family and your children or whatnot.
Yeah, your future self.
so are you
Yeah.
suggesting to put economic stability and
Outcomes for
outcomes for
adults
adults and children? And then would we leave the end of it on, and are identified in research as protective? Well, I think we do want the protective
I mean, we
factors.
can put some, no, you just put like,
Okay.
economic stability, outcomes for adults and children, or family fortune are associated with economic stability, outcomes for adults and children, and are identified in the research as protective factors against poverty.
Okay. Yes.
Can I, the last the and are identified, could we make that a that or which
Or
or
as,
something?
Surely,
as
yes.
identified.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, let me read through this one more time and see if there's any other recommendations here.
I'm happy to change
Oh, but
that.
then as is twice, so that doesn't work in the sentence. As identified in research as protective factor.
My first
That
suggestion
are-
was that.
That are identified, okay. All right, let me read this, and if there's any other comments, we can make it after, otherwise we'll vote on it. So this A would be explain how the timing and sequencing of education, employment, and family formation are associated with economic stability, outcomes for adults and children that are identified. Does that work?
That doesn't.
You still need the and in there.
And that are identified. Okay. There you go. Whatever. I mean.
Okay, let me
you can
try one more
grammar
time.
it, so the ideas are there.
Explain how the timing and sequencing of education, employment, and family formation are associated with economic stability and outcomes for adults and children that are identified in research as protective factors against poverty.
Does that last part need to be there, or could it just end with children?
I think it is protective factors against poverty, so,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole, the piece of, I mean, it
That's
does
the-
say economic stability, but I don't think it hurts to keep it there.
Okay.
okay. Okay, all those in favor?
I,
Aye. Board Member Green?
no.
Okay, so that passes with 4 in favor, 1 opposed, and that being Board Member Green. Okay, B,
Before you go on
Oh,
this one,
yes.
can I just point out that engagement was in the original?
Oh, right. Attendance, engagement, and goal
It was
setting.
attendance, comma, engagement, and goal setting. I just want to point out that that was, the way
okay,
that's written,
okay.
it appears that we didn't have engagement. I just want to make clear that
that is the
it
original.
was
was in there,
attendance,
okay.
engagement, and goal setting was the original. The word and
So we
was
just
not
need a
there.
comma between
We need to, well, we
engagement.
need to take away and, yeah, I was just gonna say that too, so
there's
that's
actually
just
no
staying the
changes.
same.
Okay, so let's,
I just wanted to point out that
okay, let's vote on
error.
B unless there's other comments to B.
B, oh, the B.
Actually, have a motion I'd like to make, and it's actually just to clarify that A.
On
It's a little-
A?
Yeah.
Okay,
The original
So-
A or the one that we just passed?
The one you just, yeah, the one that we just passed. I
so
don't know
you'd
if we
need
can do
to,
that.
Board Member Green, you'd need to make a motion to bring it back,
That wouldn't be in order.
well, unless we brought
Okay.
it back.
Yeah.
So you'd need to make a motion to bring it back, and then we would need to address that. Do you want to make a motion to bring it back?
Yes, please.
Okay, so
We
the
need to
motion,
bring back A.
the motion before us is to bring back A. What's that? As amended?
Sorry,
Oh.
point of order.
Yeah.
Can we bring it back? She can't bring it back because she wasn't on the prevailing side.
Oh, it is,
Oh, that's
that is
right.
true.
That's
We'll
right.
have to
I
make-
just had been reworking some of the words, and I just feel like A is super clunky.
Okay,
And just a little bit of massaging. I don't know. I could bring it to the full board.
okay. Okay, if
Thanks.
we get time, then maybe we can relook at that here then again too.
Yeah, well, can we just hear what she has to say?
Yeah, go ahead. Would you like to share? We have
Sure.
a
If
question
you're
of
okay with that.
inquiry.
Thank you. Okay. I just a couple, if we were to consider, explain how the timing and sequencing of education, employment, and family formation are associated with economic stability and outcomes for adults and children, as identified in research as protective factors against poverty. But if we wanted it to be a little bit more grammatically precise, just, and I think that's kind of where I'm getting hung up on a little bit. Explain how the timing and sequencing of education, employment, and family formation are associated with economic stability and positive outcomes for adults and children, and are identified in research as protective factors against poverty. So it's like super close, enough to be obnoxious, but I think the clarity would serve better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, then you bring
Do you want to bring it back, Leanne?
I'm sorry, I was just
Leanne's get a motion to bring it back.
formulating that.
I move to bring it back. I actually love the positive. I just didn't know if we were trying to talk about, make it
Positive
more
and
than negative.
negatives. That's
but
what I thought,
but-
because you're weighing them out.
But I love the addition to the positive, so I'll bring back.
Okay, all those in favor of bringing back A?
Aye.
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 Sounds like it's unanimous. Okay, go ahead and make your motion.
Okay, I'd like to move this language for explain how the timing.
Are you just
And-
adding positive? Sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're okay. I'm sorry.
If you were just adding positive, we could just make a motion to amend it to add
Okay.
positive.
All right, let's add positive.
And then you worded the end part a little bit clearer.
I did. Can I actually just send
Yeah.
this?
Send it to Jen.
Jennifer.
Yeah. She would love to take it.
Give me 1 second. I'm gonna email this over.
You? I need to.
Yeah, could we take a 5-minute break?
Yes. We're gonna take just a quick 5-minute break. You want to send that over and then we'll get that uploaded?
Yes, I just sent that. Let me know if you don't
Okay.
get it.
Okay, so just for the public, we're just gonna take a quick 5-minute break. So everybody get up in the room and stretch, please.
Yes, Mom. Huh? You did go to Pilates?
Sybil always thinks that we need stretch breaks in the middle.
Keep cruising here. Okay, so we currently have, Board Member Green has moved that, so we're adding in positive factors against poverty. It's kind of simplifying that a little bit. Let me read it out, what we're looking at voting on. That the committee amend subsection A to read, explain how the timing and sequencing of education, employment, and family formation are associated with economic stability and positive outcomes for adults and children, and are identified in research as protective factors against poverty. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that passes unanimously. And
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for, this is a team effort, and we do good work here, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, I was just a minute late on that, but thank you for that.
Yeah, you're good. Okay, we're gonna go to B now.
Doesn't need one, because it.
So we're just suggesting it
B
pass.
was just copied over
So we're
incorrectly,
gonna-
so just C. But
Okay.
I've left it there so that when we move forward with the completed motion, it will remember it has a B.
Okay,
Does that
and
make sense?
do you want to just go ahead and vote on that, or should we just let's go to C. Let's do that, and then we'll just, okay. So C is written as recognize, and the suggested change is recognize that did I read that right? Okay, sorry, I did jump. Recognize that regardless of individual circumstances, students can be empowered to secure a successful life by completing their education, planning for a career, and making thoughtful choices about relationships and family life. Okay, any comments to that one? Okay, we will go ahead and take a vote on that then. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Board Member Green?
Aye.
Okay, that passes unanimously, and we'll go down to Standard Health 2 in just a second. And this is in human development. It's adding a standard in number 10. So the first part, and I guess we would need to make the same changes we made above. Would that, is everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll do that unless there's someone that's not okay with that. We'll correlate it with the above standard. Okay? Okay, so let's go to A. So underneath this, it says, A says, identify the three major components of the success sequence. Research and discuss the correlation between following the timing and sequencing of education, employment, and family formation, and their role as protective factors associated with financial stability. Okay, we'll let you think on that for just a minute there.
So the interesting thing is what we put in the 7th and 8th grade seems to have more requirements than what we did for high school.
Except for the research and
Yeah.
discuss correlation, so.
Yeah,
Do you have a suggestion there then?
I'm just wondering if we've mixed them up, like we're making the 7th and 8th graders do more work than we're making our high schoolers do work. It just seems like this is simplified but maybe not. Can we just scroll up for a second, just to see, because it's basically the same, right? That this time you put in the research, so it's probably fine.
Can I tell you the big piece of, like, if you're thinking blooms, analyze correlation is a very rigorous task. So they do read very similar, because remember, this is the root. The actions are how they do this is through we had AB, you may end up with ABC. They're going to do this, they're going to analyze the correlation, which is very rigorous, and they're going to do that for success sequence through AB, maybe C.
Oh, I see. You're
So-
saying at the top, so there's maybe no need to replicate. I was
Yeah.
trying to follow what you're
So the
saying.
rigor comes from the verb, analyze, and that's very different than explore in Health 1. That is a very big difference. So there was a reason, but you are right, they read very similar because it is saying what they're going to do, which is analyze the success sequence as defined. And then how they're going to do it is R, A, B, possibly C. Did that help? Beautiful.
So are you making any, Jody, did you have a recommendation then on that one, or are we good with that?
I just wonder, would the original language of A be better, but we add in the effects on personal and financial stability?
I do like the purple wording, but, or the addition, I just think we could strike, I guess we could do, I don't know if we need to identify the three major components of the success sequence, because that is what it is doing.
what
Is
it's
that
doing.
accurate?
Yeah, so the root is already identifying.
At the
So I
top.
agree, like putting
Okay.
it in again is telling them to know the framework twice.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I agree, you do not need to identify the three major components of the success sequence because that's what the standard does.
So could we just strike following, so it would read, research and discuss the correlation between the timing and sequencing of education, employment, and family formation, their role as protective factors associated with financial stability. Does that make sense? Okay, so I'm gonna make a motion. I'm gonna amend it to strike, identify the three major components of this success sequence. Because that's already identified in the
In the top.
and the top, and then, and strike following. So let me read that out and see if there's any other comments.
Sorry, Chair Earl, I have a point of order. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Did Member Brenton move this, or to begin with, And this is a motion to amend that movement?
This is a
cannot
motion to
remember.
amend, yes.
Thank you very much.
Right, because the whole thing is, we're just breaking it down piece by piece, so yes. So we would strike that first piece of that, identify the three major components of the success sequence, and then also strike following.
You don't have to strike it because the motion was not made on this.
Okay, and then, so this is how it will read. Research and discuss the correlation between the timing and sequencing of education, employment, and family formation and their role as protective factors associated with financial stability. Okay, think on that for a minute and see if there's any modifications any committee member would like to make. Okay, I'm gonna place that then. So
of
the
order.
yeah.
Point of order, Chair. So on the first one, you haven't voted on the first motion yet for the introduction for the standard?
Personal well-being.
Okay, we kind of did it by just consent, but we'll take an official motion. We'll do that right now.
Okay.
Okay, so the introduction, I'll read it out. If we align it with what's above, actually, it's already what's there, and then we're just adding well-being and as a data-driven, but let me read it. Analyze the correlation of the success sequence as a data-driven framework defined in section 53G 10402(1)D as completing at least a high school education and pursuing further educational opportunities, obtaining full-time employment and having children within a healthy and stable family and marriage as a connection to financial stability and personal well-being. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, that passes unanimously. And then we'll go to A, research and discuss the correlation between the timing and sequencing of education, employment, and family formation and their role as protective factors associated with financial stability. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. And we are on a recommendation by board member, I almost said Green, Brinton for B, and that she was recommending adding, explain how stable, committed families provide emotional, financial, and social support that helps individuals and children succeed in school, work, and life. And do you want to speak to that at all?
I do. I would just say that there's so much research on the family through history being the building block to stable societies and communities and providing that framework. So I think it would be good to include.
Okay. Any comments from the committee? Okay. Okay. Oh,
sorry.
oh, yeah, I'll give you a minute, sorry. And just for clarification, this age group would be normally 9 to 12? But most-
Grades, typically grades 9 or 10.
9 or 10 usually.
Yeah, when-
But they could opt it later, but it's usually our 9 or 10.
Yeah,
Great.
there's other
in high
code that
school.
requires things to be offered in 9 or 10 that are associated with health. So that does put the normal timing in 9 or 10 because
So
of other
14 to
code.
16-ish,
Typically
15 to 7?
15.
15-ish,
Yes, it could-
okay.
Yes, like when they're starting ninth grade, 14
Okay,
up to
okay.
16,
Okay.
yes.
I guess my only comment would be, there's one piece that I feel like there was a bunch of comments about. I'm just sensitive to the fact, I'm very privileged. My parents are still married. I grew up in a household that was financially stable. I have tons of privilege, but I worry about and I know that they learn about family units, and I don't have an answer to this, but I feel like sometimes, a committed, stable family can mean a lot of things, and as long as we feel like we're covering that for students, I don't want students who come from unique family units, they're raised by a grandma, or that definition there sometimes makes me a little bit uncomfortable, because I think that our students come from so many different families and types of families, and so, leaning more into a stable, committed family. I mean, I trust our educators to like make sure that they're respectful and thoughtful about how they teach that, but I guess that's kind of my hesitation on it, is just because of those, I mean, I didn't even think about it, but there were tons of comments about like, well, what if a student comes from a different situation, or, you know, how are educators gonna handle it if they, because, I mean, this is very like, the success sequence is very like traditional family units. It doesn't I mean, there's research that talks about it, you know, I mean, I can show you research about how children raised by lesbians have better outcomes. I have that research, but they don't talk about that. They just talk about marriage and family and children in that order. It's more about the ordering. And so I don't think this is necessary, and I just want to make sure that our educators feel comfortable about how this will be taught based on the different circumstances of our students.
Can I?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying, and having been a single mom, raising two kids, you know, divorced and stuff, and then now raising two kids in a committed marriage, like I see the differences in my own life and in my children's lives. And this is, so to me, this is about everybody, there's so many children in different circumstances, and of course we want to be sensitive to that, but what are the best chances? That we're just about educating for best chances for success, I guess.
Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
like, because then, you know, like single moms can have they could be included as being considered as a stable, committed family, right? I don't know. There's a lot of kids that don't have two parents, like
Yeah.
most, you know, and so, you know,
Well, and as you had
divorce
argued
rates are
earlier,
very
there
high.
are some that grandparents,
Yeah.
and sometimes
Or
even
raised
in,
by their uncle, or, you know,
well, or
whatever.
even a situation where you've got a single mom that is going to school, but there may be, you know, an aunt or someone stepping in to help. So I do think that, I think this, did you feel like
Should
that's
we-
enough, or do you feel
Should we
like
add
there's?
in varied, varied, stable, varied?
I mean, maybe just the word committed. It's like stable family, you know, I don't know.
I
families.
personally like how it's written. I think it's clear. There's 8 billion plus people on the world, and every single one of us have our own experience, our own unique experience within a family system. But the goal here is that, and why we are making special accommodations to address the success sequence, is because it is one specific way to address how that looks. So I think it's okay to say, hey, there is whatever your family looks like, if it's stable and committed by doing these things, then that's the win, and that's what
Yeah.
we're trying to do here. I think it's included
I hear what
with
you're
families.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I just feel like, hey, I know that your mom isn't married right now and she's just raising you, but that means that maybe your outcomes are not going to be as good because she didn't follow the success sequence, or so it just makes me uncomfortable because of how different kids are raised, and they're all very unique, I understand, but it's basically saying here that if you don't have a stable family, then you're not going to have the outcomes. And because you don't have what we consider a stable, committed family, you are not getting the emotional and financial social support. So, yeah.
And I think, kids that come from hard backgrounds, and there's probably lots in this room, including members on the board, who had very difficult upbringings and childhoods and experiences. But to have something that's given to you, something aspirational that you can look forward to, and even though there's love and stability in chaotic home situations, that you can be provided information to build upon your own experience for a better outcome. Again, I'm coming back to that argument. Our goal, the American dream, is that no matter where you come from, what your circumstance is, that your life for the next generation will be better. We sacrifice our lives in a way to make the next generation better. And we do that by offering information to use and utilize and implement. And I think that that's what this does. I don't think it's harmful. I don't think it's hurtful. I think it's aspirational. And I think that we can take our own personal experiences, as hard or chaotic as they may be, and be inspired by that.
Okay. Jody, do you have a comment?
Yeah, maybe a solution. The writing committee also heard and read. We read every single 1,067 comments. And which is why we added in Health 1, which we actually took off of, I think it was actually from the Merit Commission. But personal outcomes are influenced by various factors. Individual may choose a different life path. That was stricken from Health 1. But what if we added it to be here?
We have it here. You technically have it here. You're talking about the research, then you're talking about the possibilities, right?
Yep.
And then you're talking about formulate a personal plan, and then you're accommodating for potential changes, supports, changing life circumstances, and individual choices. So it does, I think it does address that in a very, it allows the student themselves to be more reflective in there. I don't think stable, committed families creates this guilt trip or something. I don't know if that's where we're going, but I feel like it's saying, hey, these are positive outcomes. There's just so much, there's so much research into what happens when you have boyfriends coming and going with a single mom that are living in her home, the abuse that takes place there. I'm just saying we've got to point out that there is stability in those committed family relationships, and letting students know they just need to know that. I just think there's value in that. So
What if it was like stable, committed families, like comma, that come in all shapes and sizes? I don't know, something. I'm not a standards writer in that way, but like pointing out, stable, committed families that may look different, or some. I don't know how to say it,
But I think families does that. If it is grandma that's raising kids, that's their family. If a family is in crisis and there's a transition during why a crisis is addressed, whatever form that comes in, you're going to extend out to families. Families is aunts, uncles, grandma, grandpas, adopted auntie, like that's what that's families. But what the clarifier here is that it's stable, committed, that provide emotional, financial, and social support that helps individuals and children succeed in school, work, and life, and that those structures can exist even in dysfunction. That's the aspiration. And a child should be given the opportunity to have that come into their reality, even if it's not whatever we perceive as picture perfect. It's for us to apply wisdom and provide those words to children so that they know, and it is in their awareness.
Jody, did you have another comment, or are you, okay,
No, I'm just thinking through it.
okay.
I'm thinking of like what it would look
Yeah,
like
yeah,
in a
yeah.
classroom is what I've
Okay.
been thinking.
Okay.
I've 10 years as a
Yeah,
teacher
yeah.
in a classroom, so I was just
Yeah,
thinking
okay.
through.
Okay, other comments? Okay, we're gonna move, so B is explain how stable, committed families provide emotional, financial, and social support that helps individuals and children succeed in school, work, and life. All those in favor? Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed?
no.
And that one passes 4-1 in opposition. So that's Board Member Rill. And I don't think we have any changes to the end one. Is there any more discussion, or we'll take the whole motion? Okay, so the motion before the committee, do I have to read the whole thing? Okay, is Health 1? Yeah, Health 1. Did we vote on Health 1 together? Let's just vote on the whole thing. Is that?
So
Yeah,
just
yeah.
vote on the entire
Okay,
health
got ya.
education standard, yeah.
Gotcha. All right.
Success sequence.
Let me see. Okay, so the recommendations that the committee approved the draft health education standards on success sequence as amended and forward to the full board for approval. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. And thank you for all the discussion. Thanks, committee members. And Jody, appreciate your input and help. Okay, so we are moving to aquatics topics for physical education standards revision.
Hi, I'm Shanda Stenger, Arts and Wellness Coordinator, covering for Terry Davis, who is working on this project. So since we were here, we're going to just do a really brief overview of where we're at with the committee, the writing committee, and then also talk about the aquatic topics. So right now we're in step 6 of the standards revision. We've had the lead writers meeting and the one writing committee with the full committee. And now the lead writers are working with their smaller group teams to work on those standards. They are establishing strand areas and targeted skills, knowledge, and competencies within those strand areas. They addressed the committee and board recommendations and reviewed the current Utah standards and other state and national standards through that process. And the lead writers were really recognized to focus on common language to write the standards and to make sure that there's good alignment, K-12, with the standards and the strands and what's within those. So that's just a quick overview of where they're at in the standards writing. Our next meeting is March 25th with all of them, where we will continue that work of the standards within the strands and what that looks like. Also during that meeting, we will bring up the aquatics topics that was passed in board and discuss who has the qualifications to help write those standards within our current committee and to verify and see if we need to add additional members to that committee to help with those aquatics topics. We then have further down some of the aquatic topics that could be placed in the physical education standards. These would be ones that do not require access to a pool. It just focuses on the knowledge and concepts of staying safe around water. Those include environmental awareness, safety precautions, safe behaviors, and risk factors. And then there are also topics for aquatic supplemental standards. We utilized SB 126, the bill that was around that didn't end up getting passed, but we wanted to pull the language from that bill because that was part of the discussion. And so those are those 3 different categories of lifeguard instructor training, also water safety instruction training, which would be a swim instructor certification, and then swimming lessons. And then we also made sure to include from the committee meeting last month, the board member suggestions such as adding nutrition, stroke development, diving skills, water safety skills, and elements of lifeguarding. So that's kind of where we're at with those aquatic topics and the PE standards writing.
Okay, any questions or comments? Do you feel like the individuals you have working on this are qualified to work on it? I know that sounds crazy, but I just want to make sure that was a question that came up yesterday.
Yes,
Make
yeah,
sure
so we reviewed, I reviewed this morning because of that question, and we have university level, LEA level support staff, and then educators.
Okay.
With the swimming ones, we're not sure, so we are going to ask at our next committee meeting to just make sure that we have people qualified, and if not, then we will form add additional
Reach
committee
out to
members.
some additional
Yeah,
people.
we want to make sure we have qualified educators and people, and
Okay.
professionals helping with those standards.
Very good. I don't have additional questions. Does anyone else? Okay, thumbs up. Good job.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. Okay, next is our math team. So if they'd like to come up. And they will be presenting data from a survey that we had and some other additional information we asked from them. So thank you. Go ahead and introduce yourselves, who's ever leading out or starting, and
My green is on down here. I am Molly Basham. I am the Early Learning Mathematics Specialist, and I am joined by Melissa Garber, our Elementary Math Specialist, and Mike Spencer, our Secondary Math Specialist. And we are excited to give you all a preview of what data science in action really looks like today. This month, pulling together the results of that survey, pulling together the ask that you all requested for us to reach out to state leaders from around the country about what their secondary structures look like, and then just pulling together some additional data based on conversations that have happened in the full board and in committee in the last few months. We have really gotten to dive in headfirst to all of the data, and we're excited to share it with you today. So we are going to share the results of that secondary mathematics structure public survey that went out from the end of January through the end of February. We're going to share the results of that research on what is going on in all 50 states around this country in secondary math, both in their standard structures and with their assessment structures. We're going to talk just a little bit about instructional materials that are available in our state, and then share some data on concurrent enrollment and some data that we found on national assessments. So I'm going to pass things over to Mike to share the results of the survey.
Yes, Mike Spencer, the secondary math specialist. I also just want to thank these two because this has been heavily focused in the secondary space, and they've been so wonderful to collaborate and help gather all this data, which has been great. So the survey results, we have just our overall data. We had 3,990 people complete it, which was awesome to see all of that input. And we had from all different types of stakeholder groups. We had all 29 counties represented in the data. And one of the things that I was excited to see, because this is something that we couldn't quite break down in the original public comment survey, is secondary math specific, to see those stakeholders there. And we see that we have good representation across years of experience and everything else. So I hope those teachers feel their voices heard in this and that they've had an opportunity to see that. Go ahead and go on to the next one. So just in the overall data, it was interesting to see, this is just all stakeholders put together. LEA choice, so there are two questions of interest. One question is, hey, should we stick with one model as a state, or should we offer choice? And then the second question was, should we pursue an AGA model, or should we pursue an integrated model? And so the statewide model, we saw around 70% of people that voiced that they felt like we should stick to one model as a state, and about 28% there that said that they would advocate for choice in that. And we did break it down into other groups as well, and so it was interesting to see the different groups. So this is for, this is still overall. Will you go to the next one? Thank you. So we see for teachers, teachers I think were slightly more like, no, we want one model. If we compare that, and we look down at the next one for parents, parents were a little more flexible with some choice in it. Teachers were a little more like, no, we want to see one model that's on there. But still overall, the majority for both of them advocating for that one model for the state. In the conversation of AGA versus integrated, overall we saw that 67% were advocating for AGA, and around 28% were advocating for integrated, and then just a small percent that didn't have an opinion on it. We saw a little bit of a shift when we looked at teachers specifically for that category. So we start to look at that closer to around that 35% versus around 60% for integrated versus AGA. And then if you look at parents, parents were definitely more likely in that integrated, or sorry, in the AGA model is what they were asking for. So about 78 or 76% of them there, and 20% for integrated. There was a lot of data here, and we could pursue a lot of different ways. And if the board has requests that you'd like us to dig into some of those other stakeholder groups, we could dive in further. This is just one example. We pulled up administrators, and so you saw administrators were a little bit more balanced between integrated versus AGA. Some of the other groups we looked at were very similar to the teacher demographics when we looked at them. But we can pull any data there that you're like, hey, can we see this as well? We can pull that up. There's just so much data to try to do for just this one committee meeting. Go ahead and go on to the next one. This was interesting as well. We focused in really on secondary math teachers, and we looked around the state I used to teach AP statistics for a lot of years, and I always think it's interesting when we peel back and we start looking at the data what's the story that's behind there? Because the average tends to hide some of the other things that are happening. So when we looked at districts, and we compared districts versus charters, and you'll notice there that when we look at charter schools, they were a little bit more advocating in the space of wanting choice for an option and for the two models. When we looked at our districts, it was more around the 14%. It was pretty heavily that no, we want to remain with one model overall. And it was also interesting to see how often we ended up with a 50-50 split. And so it's interesting to go look at the different communities. Each community has its own story. And we do have a link to the full data set if you want to go look, because as you look around the state, every community has kind of their own story that's going on with these things, including with the integrated versus the AGA. So we see the overall results, but you'll see big districts that heavily favored an integrated model like Alpine. You'll see big ones like Granite that were very heavily in favor of an AGA model. And then you'll see small districts where it's the similar thing, where you'll find different communities are just, you'll see that they're advocating in different ways. And I think it's valuable to go and see maybe what your own areas are looking at and know what they're hoping to see. I think for the survey, that is good, but before we move on to the next piece, does the committee have any questions?
I don't see any questions from the committee. Go ahead. Is it not coming on? You may have to switch with someone. It might be a battery issue. Oh. Okay. We may have to bring someone's over to you. I'm not sure where that happened, so. There we go.
We have
Okay.
green.
Thank you.
All right. In the Melissa Garber, Elementary Mathematics Specialist. Thank you for this opportunity to share some information. During the Standards and Assessment Preparation Committee meeting in February, we were asked to please do some research and reach out to our companion agencies across the nation and get a picture of the landscape of what is happening with the secondary mathematics in each state. And then also the question about how do they assess? What does their assessment structure look like? So the overall general view was we found that there are 10 states that require an AGA model or something similar. There were a couple where they did a geometry and then 2 algebra courses after. And then there are 3 states that require an integrated. Utah is one of those, so Utah, Maryland, and North Carolina. And then 37 states allowed choice. And so that structure was interesting. And from those states that allowed choice, we broke down the assessment structure of how their assessments were structured. So of the 29 states, 21 of those required a 3rd year assessment. So once their 3 courses are complete, then they take that assessment. And 16 of those are ACT or SAT. So that was also interesting. There were 2 states that require only a 9th grade assessment and 2 that only required a 10th grade assessment. And then there are 8 states that require course-specific assessments, which we thought was interesting given Utah's structure of a course-specific. So in terms of the secondary math, these are our percentages. So we thought, let's look at it in terms of percents. So choice is 74%, AGA is 20%, and integrated is 6%. And then states allowing choice with a single assessment, there were 68%, and then the remaining all have a very specific structure. So when we look at the assessment structures, this first table, we compared those that said this is an AGA structure, here's how the assessment works. And then the integrated structure, here's how our assessment works. So that's where we combined those. On the next table, we pulled all of the states that allowed choice, assessment that allowed choice, and we broke these into different categories. So in the first section, there are states that have just that one model where they've got either course specific or there's a state exam. On the next table, we've got all of the next one down on the next slide. We've got all of the states that allow choice who just have an 11th grade assessment. And so that's where we were able to break those down. We have more detailed information also, just like Mike said, in the survey results, we asked specific questions of states and they provided codes and specific assessments. If that is something you are interested in, we can absolutely pull that together. We felt like this was yes, and there's a document in backup that lists the states alphabetically so that you can also just go to the exact state and then find that there. And we're happy to answer any of those questions. It was a great opportunity to have conversations with our other state committee or agency members and just find out what their structures were. Are there any questions about the national
Any questions on that? Go ahead.
I guess.
Uh-oh.
I just can't see. Oh, my.
I took we'll just walk around.
I'm gonna hold it like a baby. So this is, the assessment piece is really interesting, and I wonder if since this has been delayed, we're extending the time period to have that expert review. If maybe the committee could talk about if we do adjust, regardless of the route that we adjust with our standards, how the assessments could or need to be adjusted, like something about that.
Yeah. Are you talking about that now, or just we want to look at that if that were, okay. From what I'm understanding, though, is that a lot of those that are doing the choice are only testing at the completion of when they would have completed those 3 courses. Could be ACT, which we're currently using, or it could be, they have state-based, right? Something they've
Correct.
written. So, okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
and Ohio was an example of a state that has a structure very similar to ours that does choice, and they do testing all 3 years. So if you want an example of what one state's done that you could look at to see what the options
So
are.
all 3 years would be course-specific.
Yes,
So whatever they're
course-specific.
taking that year, they would test on it,
Yeah,
right?
so they do an algebra test and they do an integrated 1 test,
Okay.
and they do a geometry test and integrated 2 test. And they've done correlations to compare the data between those. So
Okay.
that one was probably the most similar to our own coded rules for assessment that we talked
Closest
to.
alignment if we
Yes.
chose to do, okay, okay.
Yes, it's a state algebra 1 test.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, moving on to the next.
Pass the mic. We also, just based on conversations, and we heard some of this morning during public comment, but that have come out of this committee and come out of discussions around math in the full board, wanted to just touch briefly on what is available currently based on our 2016 integrated core. As far as instructional materials go, at USBE, we do have, and both of these are linked in the slides, our Instructional Materials Center, which has the RIMS database where curriculum that has been submitted by vendors is housed, and we at USBE bring together committees to review those materials based on alignment to our core, alignment to requirements in code and board rule, and those are completed on a 2-year rolling basis, and reviews are valid for 5 years. So our team did pull and just double check based on reviews that have been completed since 2021, so reviews that would currently be considered valid for LEAs. There are, for secondary math, aligned to our 2016 integrated core secondary standards, 7 primary curricular programs that are listed as recommended primary, which means they have full alignment to our standards. That means those are available for LEAs to adopt. Something to note, LEAs are not required to adopt a program that is reviewed in our RIM system. Some LEAs do have their own board rule that require them to adopt something within our review system, but not every LEA has that. There are also 5 programs that are listed as recommended limited, and that could be recommended limited for different reasons. It usually means that that program is still recommended, but it's considered supplemental because it may not align fully to every single one of our standards. And there were 2 programs that have been reviewed since 2021 that were not recommended by those review committees. So just something to note, the actual numbers of what is out there on our database for our current integrated secondary core standards. Any questions on that before we move on?
Okay, well, Joanne, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question because some of the feedback I've gotten in my district is that it is so hard to find resources that match our very specific state integrated standards, and that even from school to school within our district, there's no cohesion, and math teachers in the high school level are creating their own curriculum and going through reams and reams of paper, making up their own worksheets, and so school to school, class to class, so one of the things that has been a common theme feedback I have gotten is that they would love to have AGA because there's so much more access to resources, textbooks, things that it would open up where they wouldn't have to be creating their own curriculum.
Yeah, and that can vary. We can't do a review of what's out there for AGA because that's not what our instructional review process goes through for other standards. Because the requirements at an LEA can vary so greatly, an LEA could have one adopted program across the entire district or charter that they require every teacher to use with fidelity, with integrity, whatever word they want to use for it. But there are LEAs also that either choose not to adopt a program at all, and that's where you typically will see teachers creating resources themselves, or they may have an adopted program but have differing requirements for how much teachers have to utilize them. So that we can see a large amount of variation from district to district or charter to charter based on whether or not they have adopted a program district-wide with expectations that all teachers across schools implement it or not. And it looks like Mike has something to add.
Yeah, because I also want to share, because I was in the classroom when we made this transition initially from AGA to integrated, and there really was nothing. When we first came out, there was a lot of this building of resources. And we can see just on here, the landscape has changed. I think sometimes, I don't know the last time an LEA did a formal adoption to look at what is out there, because as the years have gone, it has become more accessible because there are other states that have had that as a choice option as well. So we have started to see more curriculums that have been aligned with that integrated pathway. So I think that partially could determine what LEAs are facing is how recently have they done a thorough review of, say, what's out there for them to use.
Yeah, and then I guess as we maybe move forward, not right now, but maybe even just a little bit down the road, it begs what we did with our reading, right? Our literacy is high quality instructional materials. Just getting materials is not enough. It's got to be high quality instructional materials, and it does make a difference. It's not the biggest difference. A teacher is the biggest difference that has the knowledge, right, and the ability to teach. But those materials make it easier on the educator to provide the things that they need to do in the classroom. So I think as we get maybe another 4 or 5 months out, we need to start asking, what does that high quality instructional material look like? And then to begin to lean into that a little bit, you can't just do whatever. You can add resources to it, but you need to make sure it meets a threshold of high quality, right?
Absolutely.
Which is, I'm assuming that's what the 7 resources would probably do, right? That are relayed there. Okay, thank you.
But then I do wonder too, looking at the statistics, what shocked me the most, I think, was how many want to have one model, that they don't want choice, which I thought maybe because the majority of states do offer choice, I thought we would see more people that want choice.
Yeah, and it was interesting because we also saw in states that offered choice, in transparency with that, the majority of the state was typically following the AGA model still.
Okay. And so with that, where are we, because I would say the majority that have been pulled want AGA back. So what would that look like? How would, going back to AGA, what would that transition look like? How long would it take? What is the process, I guess, for that, since I'm new?
Yeah, I think a lot of that would be up to the board. There's some code things that are in there that specifically reference math 1, 2, and 3, right? So there would be some code that would need to be amended in order to align with that. We also have what we look for concurrent enrollment, which is where the data we're going to talk about next.
Okay.
That there's specific rules about having access to concurrent enrollment. It has to go that the student passes math 1, math 2, and math 3.
So that would have to be changed to algebra, geometry, algebra 2.
Yeah, and several of the states that were in the middle of some sort of change, whether it was change like in Maryland where they're changing to integrated standards, or there were several states that were changing from choice to just one model. Almost all of them talked about the kind of phased approach where they had to implement some sort of like by 2029, by 2030 to allow, or by the class of 2029 to allow for, if a student has already started in one model, you can't necessarily expect them to just jump into the other model and have these big gaps. So that would be something that we would have to look at from a big picture and look at what sort of supports LEAs would need so that we didn't end up in a space similar to when the integrated core was initially adopted, where LEAs don't have resources.
I think
aligned.
some of the
Maybe.
response you're getting from people has to do with that.
Yes.
I was going to say, I think there was a very emotional response, and I can tell you on my end, I had kids in high school at that time, and it was hard, and it was hard on the educators. So I do think you've got some emotional response going on, which we have to be paying attention to that, because not implementing something in a way that's effective does create hardship on families and children as well as educators. The whole community is harmed. So.
Yes, I think that implementation as we roll out the standards in whatever format it is so critical. And even as you look at studies, one of the things that studies are showing over and over again is what matters maybe even more than the pathway is what kind of supports are we providing for our teachers as we roll that out.
And I think that is the strongest research out there, right? Research, right? It's not, well, it is the supports, but it is also them being able to, and this falls under the support, right? Do they have the knowledge to teach what they're teaching? And then do they have the ability to, implement that in a classroom that helps children retain the information, or students retain the information from year to year? Do you have a comment, Board Member Wood? We got one shared around here. You guys keep that one there. Those of you online, we're sharing a microphones here. We've got.
I would love to, if it's not difficult for you. You said that you could kind of go through that data a little more. I'd love to see district responses, because I think that's going to be a huge, having come from Davis, having a 7th grader in the transition, it was awful. The worksheet, so.
Yeah, in the link to the full data set, there's a table there that has every district listed.
Okay, I didn't click in. I went through the spreadsheet, the slideshow.
There's several tabs also on several tabs on that spreadsheet. So you may want to look through the different.
Okay, perfect.
Just because
we
needed to, by the way, the Qualtrics data pulled, simplify some headings.
Okay.
We did formulas to make the
I
graphs.
didn't catch on. I didn't pick that up either. I went through all the information, but I didn't pick that up. So
yes, and if anyone wants to schedule a meeting through leadership with us to go through kind of what's in there, we're more than happy to meet with you to talk through what's in those slides, because we have spent a lot of time making sense of that data.
You guys are doing it. I was so impressed with the information, so thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, do you want to continue?
Yeah, we'll move on. We'll talk about concurrent enrollment. This, I know last time in full board meeting, there were some questions about how are our students performing in our higher ed system? Are they coming prepared, and what data do we have to show that? So the reports that we were able to pull from USBE, a lot of the data is pulled, they have a bench line of the year 2015-16. And the reason for that is because there was a Senate Bill 196 that was passed in 2015-16 called the Math Competency Bill, which really aimed to expand access to concurrent enrollment. And so they've collected data that's shown, in comparison to that year when that bill passed, what are we seeing? What are some of the trends that we have going on? And one of the things that we saw initially before that time is college algebra, math 1050 was the primary concurrent enrollment course that students were taking. That bill expanded that, and we've really, we have opportunities for quantitative reasoning and introduction to statistics, and a lot of higher ed institutions went through what their programs were requiring for their quantitative literacy credit and said, why are you requiring that? And why? Because Math 1050 is more of a STEM pathway. And so they expanded that out. They also expanded out how students qualified for different things. So for example, to qualify for Stat 1040 or Math 1030, students can get in automatically if they have a C or higher in Math 1, 2, and 3. They don't have to do a placement test. They're just in. For college algebra, they have to pass with a C or higher, and then they have to get a placement score on the ALEX exam. So a lot of this data is comparing it to what happened there. And you can see that we've definitely expanded. The last 5 years is the data that we have there and compared to the previous one. And initially, if we had data from like 2016, 17, and 18, initially kids were still pursuing exclusively 1050 almost. And the USHE's made some great efforts to advertise for students and say, why would you choose the pathway you're on? What are you interested in? And so we're seeing more students that are selecting their option based on what their career interests are. Can you go on to the next one? That's just a direct comparison for each of the concurrent enrollment courses. You can see how the numbers have increased for each of those courses. The 1060, 1065, that one's a little lower because you have to, it's college algebra and then trigonometry, and a lot of kids are out of the system by the time they take college algebra, so we don't see as many students taking 1060 in the system. There was, I feel like, can you go down a little bit? There was one slide that,
Up or down?
go up. I feel like we're missing one.
You are missing one, because it was the one that I asked the question on.
Yeah.
Oh,
Hope one more.
so the one that, and the one that we were sharing was about college remediation rate. So how many students are taking remedial courses? Oh, there it is, it's at the end. Okay, yes. Similarly, we've seen a mostly steady decline. We're at about the point now where the last few years, we're at about 12.5% of first-year college students that are enrolled in remedial math courses. And again, there's all kinds of discussions about what impacts this and what's created these trends. I think part of it is definitely due to Senate Bill 196. The higher ed system is also, they put in a lot of effort in those students and who's receiving remedial coursework. They've had great success in the last few years with what they call a co-requisite model, where rather than putting a student in a remedial course, they'll put them in, say, Stat 1040, and then they'll have them take another class with it, where they provide supports just in time as they're learning about it. And they've had success rates for kids that never would have been placed in there that are similar to the ones that are prepared for that course.
The gentleman that spoke this morning about the statistics class, if you remember that?
Yes.
He said the same thing, that because you have to take the ALEX test, or at least when I talked to him before, I've talked to him before, but he said when you take the ALEX test that it didn't place the students so they could qualify for this, but he opened it up for whoever wanted it to take it, but he provided additional supports and found that they could successfully take it.
Yes, and that data, I could get it from USHE and share it with you guys
Yeah.
if you're interested, but there's been tremendous success rates with their co-requisite model that they're using there.
So I do have just one quick, because I did break down some numbers too, because I was curious. Because we saw this trend where everybody has to go to college for a while, right? And from 2019, and this is just pulling it off of USHE's stuff, to 2021, 2022, there was a 6% drop in students actually going to college.
Yeah.
So it went from 46% of enrolled the first year to 38% in 2021. We didn't count 2020. And then it stayed pretty close to 37 point or 38%. So it is, I mean, we do have a drop here, but we also have a drop in students actually enrolling. So I don't know if that had any impact too. We were kind of saying everybody should go, and now we're saying you should do what's the best thing for you, and it could be college, it could be, a variety of different pathways.
Yeah, right. And I know
So-
they've talked about those similar things.
Yeah.
I mean, it is still a percentage. And also I think that it speaks to as well, like, just there's so many factors.
Oh, yeah,
There's
yeah.
just not one
Yep.
thing that's going to capture all of what's making these trends happen. But I do know they've just done some very intentional things trying to support that very thing.
Yeah, that's good. It's interesting, they did, well, anyways, we don't get into all the data, but there was some other data that I had questions on, but it was further out. So we'll talk about that another time. So,
Okay.
do we have other items?
Yeah, one more.
Okay.
Just the final piece of data that we included, and Julie Clark actually mentioned something about this in her reading presentation that she did. It's hard to compare Utah to other states, especially when we have different assessments. And so the two main assessments that we can use when we're looking at comparative data, and Andrea, if we're driving, will we go to the NAEP data? I think it's up a slide. One more up. There we go. So on the 8th grade math NAEP data, that is a national assessment, as we talked about. And this just shows some comparisons of where Utah is scoring. First of all, what is the score? And it is 282, and then where they are in comparison to other states. And then the other assessment data, sorry, we've got that slide right in the middle, is the ACT data. And the ACT data is two down, is the ACT data. And this graph shows a comparison of states that test all. In Utah, all students are assessed on the ACT, and they're given that opportunity. And it's too small for me. Is it 11 others? Yeah, 11 other states that also assessed all students. And so Utah is the red line that they are an integrated state, and the other bolded green line is North Carolina. And so that's just some information that we have nationally in terms of how our students are performing.
So, question. So the NAEP scores, that would be elementary. That's like our way of scaling how our elementary schools are performing in math.
Yeah.
And then the ACT shows you secondary, right?
Correct.
I mean, I'm looking at this average math scores and even the NAEP. I think that we have this huge discussion about math, and we're talking so much about changing and all of the different, thoughts and opinions that we have out there, which are totally understandable, I think make for a really good process. But I think it's really, I just want to point out how great our students are performing in ACT and in NAEP. Like, I find, like, I look at this ACT chart, for example, and I'm like, look at how high above we are. There's one other state that's kind of biased, North Dakota. I mean, do they have enough people to compare it? I don't know. But I mean, they're like, we're doing great when it comes to this. And so, and even on those NAEP scores, like, I see that improvement, and I think that's outstanding. So I just want to point that out as, like, that's secondary and elementary school, and I think there's a lot of success that we can build upon to increase them even more. But I don't want it to go without saying how well our students are doing, and I think that ACT one especially is really cool.
Yeah, it's such a great reflection on what our students are doing and what our teachers are doing. I mean, they perform miracles every day. And the NAEP, we pulled the 8th grade scores, but similar results in 4th grade. So, yeah.
Can we didn't include the Department of, what is it?
Department of Defense.
It wasn't included in the other items, although I do
DOED.
think they have the AGA medal, but. Okay, you're like, we did it, but we didn't do it, so.
We reached out to them. We got verified responses from all 50 states.
I
We did
see.
not get we got
Okay,
verified response,
okay.
or we're very clearly able to verify
To identify it,
state
okay.
statute or website a response from the
Okay.
one state that we did not hear back from. The information from DODEA was a little bit harder to verify, and we did not get a response from multiple inquiries.
Okay.
But we can try to go back on their website and
Yeah,
what's
that's-
available to see exactly what they're
Yeah,
doing.
that's fine. It just seems that in this area, they're always kind of significantly higher, so. And and maybe they use the same curriculum always. There's something about consistency, right, that does lend itself to that, so. But I would say down on the ACT one, I do love this, what is her name? It's the data lady.
Brooke Anderson. One note
Yeah.
though, if you're DOD, you're required to go to school. So that, there's not an absentee problem, at least that's one little outlier in that data.
Okay, so,
Because
because they're going to school, they're learning.
Yeah, I know.
But
Well,
they
this is
still
like-
are, even at
I
that,
want
they still are
everyone to-
making
I want everyone to go to school so
significant
they can
progress,
learn. I mean,
so.
it's required, I
Yeah.
guess.
And I do think it is interesting. I mean, we aren't significantly decreasing. We're just staying at between 19 and 20. So I do think that it's,
Yeah,
yeah.
that y-axis is worth noting, and it's small on the screen right now, but this is a relatively
Yeah, it's
small
20.
variation of scores across the board. But it is interesting to look at those trend lines for Utah's, which is in the big bold red, and other states that assess all students. That's when Brooke shared
Yeah,
this, we
yeah.
were like, Brooke, we need you to give us a copy of this to use, because it is so interesting, and it's hard sometimes to compare when Utah assesses all students on the ACT, and then you have other states where
right
2% take the ACT, and it's 2% that are college-bound students. So it's interesting to
Yeah,
look
that's
at.
absolutely right. I mean,
Yeah.
we have to look at those pieces. So anyways, okay.
I have a question real quick
Yes,
about that.
Board Member Green?
So our graph here is 2016. Could we get that from like 1990?
Yeah,
Is that an easy ask, or?
Did we test all, and I guess you'd start where, I mean, we could do that. When did we start testing all students? Was it in 2016? Because
Yeah.
there was a point where the law changed and we said all students will take it in 11th grade, and before that, it wasn't the case.
Yeah, I'll have to research that. I don't remember the exact date, but if we went back to the 90s, we didn't test all students in the 90s. It was relatively recent that we started testing all students.
Okay, Emily, would you like that information?
If it's not hard to get, yeah.
Oh, okay, okay. Any additional questions, comments? Math specialists, I guess if we have additional ones, we could reach out to you. Okay. And there was a letter that came from Yushi this morning. I think it should have, board members, check your email, it's there. They submitted some comments just kind of for information. I think we're done. We're past our time, and we're going to let Jennifer actually email us her information. So if you have, and our last item would be just kind of a legislative update. She had some, I asked her, I said, can you just kind of pull together some things that standards and assessment should be aware of based on legislation? And it's still kind of preliminary because they haven't officially met and kind of pulled their things together, but I wanted us to maybe just have it on the front burner of what was going on there, so. Okay. Thank you, and I think I could seek a motion from the committee. Okay, motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye.
Hi.
All right. Have a good day. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.